All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to StealthyHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
You're listening to the Northern Hunter Podcast, home of all things hunting, fishing, and outdoors in Alaska.
Welcome back to the Northern Hunter Podcast, everybody. I'm Dalton Gray.
I'm Ryan Humphreys.
And it'll just be us this week. I hope you're not disappointed, but we've got a good show for you. We've got some neat stuff to talk about.
It'll be a good show.
Yeah. James got stuck out in the field for work tonight, and so it's just you and me here, buddy.
Poor guy.
Yeah. Well, I think he's driving back into town right now.
Oh, okay. Well.
We were talking this afternoon. He was able to call me, but he's been out in the field for a couple of days now and out at a remote site and working on stuff, and a lot of storms have been coming through, and they got some snow, and the roads are real slick. It's been warm. That's
too warm.
Recent news for our part of the state anyway. I think most of the state's been pretty warm.
I haven't really
even
paid
up in
attention.
Prudhoe, it was up close to, or if not above zero here recently.
Really?
Yeah, uncharacteristically warm for February for sure.
I heard there was another part, like the eastern part of the United States was getting a little bit of a cold snap.
Yeah. It was
Kind of weird.
15 degrees in Ohio a couple days ago.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty chilly. I just heard that.
Colder than here.
Yeah, I was watching a couple of outdoor games in the NHL here the last weekend, and they were talking about next year's stadium, and they're going to play it in Columbus, an outdoor game. And they said, yeah, if it's weather like today, then it'll be kind of a test of who's a real fan, because it's 15 degrees today in Ohio. So that's the only reason I know that. But
Yeah, if they played a game at 15 degrees in Fairbanks, everybody would be there.
That's pretty chilly. But yeah, I mean, if they were doing an outdoor game like that in Fairbanks in this time of year, then yeah, bring your bunny boots. It's going to be chilly.
In about 2 weeks or less, we've had negative 50.
Yeah.
And I think I saw 46 yesterday.
Above
zero.
Yep.
So that's over a 90-degree fluctuation in temperature
within a couple weeks.
Yeah. Which,
but you know, if you think about it, for this time of year, we're getting more and more daylight.
We are, yeah.
And as we get more sun, this time of year, the sun gains a little more warmth. The sun in December and January is pretty much just light. There's really not a whole lot of warmth that comes off of it for us. Once we get through the middle of the February time frame, the sun starts to warm up. And so even if it's 30 below at night this time of year on through the spring, it's going to be up around zero during the day, usually. Obviously, we could still have another big cold snap. Winter is far from over.
Right.
That's the funny thing is everybody on social media, wow, we're going to have an early spring. It's melting. No.
It's not springtime.
Buckle up.
It feels like it. You walk outside and you think it because that's...
You walk outside in a long sleeve t-shirt and you're warm.
Yeah.
And compared to 2 weeks ago, sure. And I'm not complaining. I will take this over 50 below any day of the week.
My house, the other day, I keep my house around 65 degrees.
Yeah.
Which is a agreement between me and my wife. For me, it's a little too warm still. For my wife, it's a little cooler than she might prefer, but I can't sleep if it's much warmer than that.
Right.
You know, I can't even have covers on.
Soaked in sweat. Yeah.
And
I'm the same way.
Last night, I was like soaked in sweat, and I get up and look at the thermostat, and my thermostat was set right. Boiler wasn't running, but the house was 70 degrees because it had warmed up so much that day. And and she'd run the oven or whatever, and just like boom, it was.
Yeah. Well, and the sun heats up the house that much, and the house holds that heat, and
Yeah.
Everything just warms up.
The sun doesn't heat up my house a whole lot, but.
Yeah. I mean, if you have any big windows in your house, then you really get the effect of the sun. It's pretty impressive this time of year. Mm-hmm. But it's been good weather. We're having a pretty good winter. We really don't have much to complain about, but it's not spring yet. It's fake spring. So
first spring.
Yeah, first spring. And then we'll have second winter.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll have second spring. And then we'll have winter. Last straw of winter. Yeah. That'll probably come in like April. We'll probably see.
May.
Yeah, you never know, but I'll be gone in May. So I don't care what it does in May.
Okay, well.
But by June, it'll be warm out. That's a safe bet. Anyway, well, thanks for coming back to the show this week, everybody. We're glad to have you. Thanks for listening. And just a quick reminder before we get off into our interesting topics for this week. If you like the show and you like what we're doing, be sure to go to whatever platform you're listening to, scroll down to the bottom, leave us a 5-star review, and write us a good rating if you would. I guess that's opposite. Give us a 5-star rating and write us a review. I got those backwards.
Yeah, no, you're right.
That'll work a little bit better.
And while you're at it, if you have any friends or anybody you think would like this show who's interested in Alaska or hunting, or if you're local and you like the show just because you like hearing about the state you live in, and you have family in the States who are, enamored with Alaska because like everybody down there, it seems like it's just a mysterious, faraway location, just like Africa or Australia are to us, right?
Right.
Do us a favor and them a favor. And send them a link to the show.
We would appreciate it.
It's a huge help when you do that.
Try to get some followers and keep growing these numbers. We're doing well, and we appreciate all the support that we've gotten. And if you'd like to contact us directly, you can contact us on our social media at The Northern Hunter on Instagram or Facebook right now. And then also, even easier, just go to our website, thenorthernhunter.com, and then we have a contact us button up there. And you can write us an email directly into the show, which we will be talking about a couple of those listener emails this week from questions that we've gotten from folks. And anything to do with hunting or outdoors in Alaska, gear-related, hunt tactics, equipment, whatever you have a question about, feel free to write us in. We don't talk about all the questions we get on the show. We don't have time, but we do our best to always get a response back to any of those listener questions. So
we do.
We would appreciate that.
On the email thing, just to make a quick announcement to our listeners.
Yes.
If anybody has tried to send an email from the middle of last week, from when you're listening to this to about the middle of the week before that, in that time period approximately, there's a chance that the emails were down. There was some website hosting stuff that got switched around in the middle of that. The email got taken down and we didn't know it. And it's all back up and running like it's supposed to be and fixed. So if you tried to send an email in that time, it may not have even looked like anything. It was weird because of the way it happened. You may not have got an email back saying it didn't send. But if you sent something and you haven't heard anything back, it can't hurt to send one again.
Yeah. And if all else fails and you don't get a response via email, then use our social media if we are having technical difficulties. And then also, last thing but not least, you can also support us on our website by shopping any of our merch. We have hats, hoodies, and t-shirts, logo aware. And then also you can shop from any one of our sponsors that has a linked discount code in our partners page on the website. You can get some sweet discounts on a lot of different kinds of gear, from knives to bullets to rifle covers, first aid kits, bear bait, trapping lures, moose lures that are legal for use in Alaska. And I don't think I'm forgetting anything there. 60-inch club, game bags. Game bags, rafts, raft rentals, full access hunt planners through Troy Sessions at 60-inch club. There's a lot that we have on there with great sponsors that we've chosen to work with. So,
and just real quick. None of these things are just things that we've hooked up with because they're willing to offer us a deal. A little bit of research, you'll discover that anybody who wants to make a deal with any company or big companies that do it all the time, it's pretty easy to do. We have specifically picked companies whose products we believe in, that we have used and really like. Because they're top of the line.
We don't recommend stuff that we don't know works.
That's right.
So, Alaska draw tags are out.
Oh, really? I didn't notice.
We're playing that down because we didn't get anything. But big surprise, you and I each only put in for one hunt each.
I
know. It's.
I mean, who can afford to put in for more than that?
It's not a matter of affording. It's pretty cheap up here. I mean, compared to other states, we've got it pretty good.
You're right.
It's more of a time thing for me anyway. It's just what falls in what time of year.
Mm-hmm.
And even if I drew some great whopper banger tag somewhere, do I have time to go hunt it?
Yeah.
And I don't like being the guy that might draw something and then not be able to go take advantage of it.
No, I agree. And there's tags that I know I have like a really high percentage chance of getting.
Yes.
I know the area. I know it's really good. I know how to hunt the area, but it's cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
Cost prohibitive to get there.
Yeah. The access is the hard
Right.
part for all those high percentage ones. They're high percentage for a reason because, well, they're just hard to get at.
And then the other kind of high percentage, which is high percentage chance of not getting it.
Yeah.
Which is what we both put in for.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we put in for.
I put in for 2.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I put in for the one sheep one and then the muskox.
Oh, up on the Dalton?
Yeah. I mean, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, there's an even lower percentage chance of that one than the sheep one I put in for. But
I saw a picture on one of the Facebook forums of a guy that his friend drew that, and they drove up there and shot it. I mean, obviously archery inside the 5 mile corridor. Shot it with a bow, and I think he said it was within. I mean, it was definitely within a quarter mile of the road. But yeah, I mean that's a great hunt opportunity.
I mean, that's why I put in for it. It's easy enough to do.
Yeah,
it's not like I don't see them every time I'm up there.
Yeah, and there's great bulls up there.
Yeah.
They don't get hunted otherwise. It's
almost so easy. I'd almost rather shoot it with a rifle, if that makes sense. Just so I can say, look what hammer bullets did on a muskox, right?
Yeah.
But I can't do it there. So
yeah, most of the other muskox tags up here, if you choose to go with a native guide in one of these villages, you end up spending thousands of dollars. And at that point, it's the same price as just fly to Greenland and do it, where it's just a non-draw. You can just go over there and hunt one. And it's about $6,000, which if you draw, like, I think it's Nunivak Island.
I don't remember.
That sounds right anyway.
Because I'm a northern hunter, but
yeah. Anyway,
I one keep of the up islands, on all this tech stuff, so you can keep up on all that.
Yeah, one of the islands out northwest off the coast of Alaska that has muskox that you can draw a tag for. And I actually know some folks that have done that hunt. But you fly out to a native village out there, and then you hire a guide because it's all native land that you're going through to access your area usually, unless you go a DIY route, which is harder than it sounds. But they'll hire a native guide, and they'll have snow machines that they rent you, and then you go out and ride out from there on the pack ice, and then you shoot your muskox and whatever. But by the time you get into all that cost, it's just about the same price as flying to Greenland for a muskox hunt. So if I never draw one in Alaska, if I ever start putting in for one, which I should, I really don't have an excuse not to.
I mean, the Dalton Highway one's pretty.
Yeah. And then in the road after me. So it must be easy. So anyway. So no draw results for us that are on a positive note, but we do have some friends that seem to have drawn the long straw again and again and again. One guy that we just had on the podcast.
Oh, I didn't know if we were going to say who it was or not.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to say his name because we've had a lot of guys in the podcast lately. And yeah, but one of them in particular drew a great tag. Maybe we'll have him on again after he kills another animal on that tag.
We'll have to take him in and show him how to do it this time.
So no good results for us, but there's always next year. And in Alaska, we are pretty blessed to have a lot of over-the-counter opportunities, just free tags. There's registration permits. There's over-the-counter permits. There's all kinds of stuff available for us.
Time and access are the biggest constraints. And it really comes down to time.
Yeah.
And then willingness to put in the footwork to get to where they are.
Right. And that's the nice thing about an over-the-counter tag. You just pick it for your unit and go hunting. It's pretty awesome. So we really don't have anything to complain about. Well, there's an interesting article.
Yeah, I saw that.
Let's get on to that. You sent this to me.
I did.
Early last week sometime.
Something like that.
It is on outdoorlife.com. This is posted on the 12th of this month of February. I'll read you the title, and then we'll go over a quick synopsis.
Okay.
A hunting TV show host who says he didn't know the regs just got fined $31,000 for poaching violations. Ouch.
Yeah.
So if you go on to read this article, this is an individual, I believe he is Canadian. And I'm not going to drop his name. It doesn't take much for you to figure out who it is, but I'm not, I don't know. We're going to get off into the discussion of how each of us feel about it, because I think you and I have slightly varying tolerances on what's going on here.
Okay.
Possibly.
We'll see.
I haven't read the article all the way through, but you have a few times. I've skimmed through it, so I know what's going on here. But anyway, so to begin, a joint investigation between Alberta and British Columbia conservation officers resulted in multiple charges filed against the host of Wild TV's Alpine Carnivore. This is a TV show.
Yeah.
Both agencies announced on social media on Thursday. It goes on to give this individual and his wife have been fined more than $31,500 for a laundry list of charges stemming from at least 3 hunts in Alberta and BC between August of 2020 and September of 2021. The charges include hunting without a license, hunting in a closed season, providing false information and abusing license requirements within protected wildlife areas, and unlawful possession and export of wildlife, all in Alberta, for which the fines totaled $25,000. The Alberta press release says. According to the British Columbia press release, the individual was fined $4,500 for allowing his wife to use his hunting license to kill a bear. His wife was also fined $2,000 for hunting without a license in the same incident. The duo still faces 3 additional charges from incidents in January of 2022 and April of 2022, including failure to comply with the terms of a permit and hunting or carrying a firearm without a license, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation reports. The individual took to his Facebook page on Friday to address the charges in a 15-minute apology video, during which he explained his side of the story, in quotes, and apologized for his behavior. He also explains how he didn't act out of malice and that the laws he broke were honest mistakes, due to his not knowing certain local hunting laws. Much like in the United States, laws around hunting differ from province to province. This is in quotes here. There are 3 hunts here of which we've been convicted. 1 bear hunt in British Columbia, 1 sheep hunt in Alberta, and 1 moose hunt in Alberta, he says to the camera. Just to be clear, there's not dozens of hunts all over multiple provinces where we've committed offenses.
So when I first read this article and I saw that, it came off as very defensive.
Yeah.
When somebody's acting defensive, they feel guilty.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. I'm just going to.
Yep. I know where you're going here. We'll keep reading. He then explains how in 2020, he and a cameraman traveled into an area closed to hunting to kill a bighorn ram in Alberta. They had no idea the area was closed to hunting due to a lack of signage, he says. Initially, he was penalized by Alberta conservation officers for falsely tagging the ram and using a vehicle to recover the carcass in a no-vehicle zone, both infractions that he self-reported to the agency after an off-duty conservation officer made him aware of the rules. But over a year later, the investigation into the location where he harvested the ram brought a search of his home, seizure of said ram, and much more significant charges and penalties. He goes on to explain that the circumstances around the moose infraction, during which he says he applied hunting rules from his home province of Ontario to a hunt in Alberta and shot a moose using his cameraman's tag. We didn't try to hide this, he says. We literally posted the video publicly for everyone to see it because I thought we were fine in doing so. Obviously, we weren't. He says it was my own mistake and it really sucks that it happened, but that's the truth. For this offense, I lost my license for 1 year and received some pretty darn high fines. It's not like we were hunting this animal with no tag. We did have a tag. It's not like it was hunted in a park or at night or out of season. This is literally a licensing issue that I'm getting hit with, in my opinion, quite steep fine and penalties for. The third and final hunt in question was a bear hunt in British Columbia when his wife shot a bear on his tag following the same logistic as the previous moose hunt. Comments on his video range from as supportive to critical, most of them falling into the latter category. So people that were commenting on his video. Commenters denounced the hunting personality's ignorance of local laws and attempts at explaining away the situation. Supporters, on the other hand, told him to keep his head up and appreciated his candor. Overwhelmingly critical comments also popped up on the two agency press releases, most of them scolding officials for not setting harsher punishments. On Friday, his show also announced that it had removed all Alpine Carnivore content from its various platforms and does not condone his behavior. These actions showed a blatant disregard for fish and wildlife laws in British Columbia and beyond. Unfortunately, cross-border poaching is not an unusual occurrence, Conservation Officer Kyle Ackles says in a BC press release. This was a complex file that was concluded due to the dedication and cooperation from our officers and colleagues in Alberta. We'd like to thank them for their tireless efforts. And that concludes the article. If you guys want to go through and read that for yourselves, again, you can find that on Outdoor Life under the hunting news category. All right, Mariah, what's going on here?
Well, I read this, like I said, I've read it a couple times, 3 times now. Yeah. And I came to some conclusions. One is I can see where some, as he calls them, honest mistakes could be made.
Yeah.
But we've got several things going on here. For 3, we've got 3 major hunting violations. None of these are simple.
And there are more under current investigation from 2022.
Are there really?
January. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It said January and April, I believe, of 2022. There are, they're still facing 3 additional charges from incidents in January and April of 2022.
I missed that part. Yeah, no, you're right.
And those are the charges, including failure to comply with the terms of a permit and hunting or carrying a firearm without a license.
Interesting. Yeah, I missed that little paragraph there.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're right. So
facing 3 current charges for charges in 2020 and 2021, and now more from January and April of 22.
Mm-hmm. Now he says it says a hefty fine of $31,000. If this was in Alaska,
he wouldn't have a birthday left.
Yeah, he wouldn't have anything, and it would have been. I think it would have been prosecuted a lot faster than 3-4 years.
He would probably be in jail.
Yeah, I mean, there's things we're not going to bring up that have happened in the U.S.
Yeah,
wildlife violations in the U.S. get taken care of quickly.
Yeah. The ongoing joke for Alaska is that you'll get less jail time for murder than you will if you poach a moose. Obviously that's saying with a hefty amount of sarcasm, but that's the joke.
It's a joke, but the sad thing, it's not. We have a corrupt justice system. I'm not going to get into the politics, but even in Alaska, as great of a state as this is, I know people personally who, I know at least one guy who went to jail because he was somewhere where somebody got killed, but the guy who actually did the killing was out of jail within a week.
Really?
Yeah, I can tell you the story later, and you know part of the story, I think. But anyway, so that all aside, wildlife violations in Alaska, especially, but the United States in general, get taken care of quickly and well.
Yeah.
And while sometimes I think things are a little overdone, most of the time it's probably right. When there's blatant disregard for the law, there's law for a reason.
Well, look at the article that we talked about last week. The guy in Montana that is facing $250,000 in fines and reparations for cloning Marco Polo sheep and selling them.
He didn't hunt illegally, at least not that we know of.
Yeah.
And that's actually funny. That's the link at the bottom of this article here. Read next.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one there.
Yeah.
If you want to know more about that, listen to our last episode.
Yeah.
Anyhow, back into this article here. Just initial impressions of the specific things he's being targeted for, or he has been charged for. Initially, bighorn ram in Alberta.
Yes.
In a closed area. And of course, his excuse was that they had no idea due to lack of signage. He was penalized for falsely tagging the ram and then using a vehicle to recover the carcass in a no vehicle zone.
Yeah.
Just those 2 things alone.
Yeah.
Now that's where the majority of the 31,500, it's like 25K of the fines come from.
Yep.
And it's now, and then number 3 of those things, there's 2 things there. Killed a ram in a no hunting zone. Recovered it with a vehicle in a no vehicle zone. And number 3, it says he self-reported to the agency after an off-duty conservation officer made him aware of the rules. But over a year later, the investigation into the location where he harvested the ram, brought a search of his home, seizure of the ram, and much more significant charges and penalties.
Yeah.
Now, I've never hunted in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
However, I do know that when you self-report, maybe he ran into somebody who said, hey, this doesn't look legal. I'm just making sure you're following stuff right. If you immediately call and let them know what's going on, you then are required to bring the meat and the trophy and everything that was taken, into them. Sign paperwork like this is what happened, right?
Yeah.
Go through it with the officer. Hey, if you're going to get a lawyer involved, that's when you get your lawyer involved, and that's when everything starts.
Right.
The fact that a year later, this happened makes me think that he did not, even if he did so, as he self-report, he was not upfront about what happened.
So it was interesting verbiage there where it says where an off-duty conservation officer made him aware. To me, that can go one of two ways. Either he's talking to this fella and he mentions that he killed a ram.
Yeah.
And the guy asks him, where did you kill that ram?
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps it's just as simple as, what unit were you in? Right. And maybe the individual in question here said the unit, and the officer said, I don't think that's open. I could be wrong, but I don't know.
Right.
Maybe I'm just not thinking straight. And then that made the guy nervous. And then he looked into it and realized he was guilty, and then he self-reported.
Except that it says that
that could be the definition of made aware. It could also be that the officer told him, no, that's completely illegal, man. They're going to come after you for that. You better turn yourself in.
The wording of the way this article is worded, through the rules of the English language, and it could be not quite properly in order here, but it says both infractions that he self-reported to the agency after an off-duty conservation officer made him aware of the rules.
Right.
But over a year later,
they come into his house.
It was a year later after he self-reported. He could have self-reported. I'm not trying not to tear the guy apart here, but he could have self-reported the fact that he used a vehicle where he wasn't supposed to.
Right. And not said that he shot the ram.
And so then they start investigating this. Like, wait a minute, this doesn't all add up. Okay, here's a slap on the wrist for using a vehicle. Thanks for telling us.
Right.
Him trying to get.
Yeah. Telling half the truth is still somewhat of a lie. Yeah.
So and really. And there's an issue obviously where, and once again, the wording in here is a little confusing because one place it says his wife shot something on his hunting license, and then it says on his tag.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that means hunting license or tag, or because obviously tag is one thing. Some places probably allow that, especially for family.
Yeah.
License is a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is he was not paying attention to the rules.
Right.
If this was an honest mistake.
Yeah.
And if you're speeding down the road and the speed limit says 40 miles an hour and you're going 50, telling the officer that pulled you over that you didn't see the sign is not an excuse.
Yeah. Nope. It's not going to fly.
It doesn't work that way.
Nope.
You can't look away from the speed limit sign every time you go by and then just tell the officer you have no idea what the speed limit is because you didn't see the sign.
Right. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse to break it.
It is your responsibility as a citizen of whatever country you live in to know the law.
Yeah. Now, for those that, are just throwing the book at him here, you're just, wow, this guy's completely over the rails. He's just way out of line. He's this terrible guy. Okay.
I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but it's really hard to do that.
Right. I have watched this guy's YouTube channel in years past. I know who he is. I heard about this months ago, probably actually well into last year. I heard about this ongoing investigation and these charges that were, going on. And the initial response from the people that I heard about it from was somewhat sympathetic, as if part of these were, man, it's an unfortunate deal. He's a well-meaning guy. He wasn't out there trying to break the law, but he was ignorant, and so now he's paying for it. He's paying the piper because, again, ignorance is not an excuse. And while I don't have any sympathy for poachers, I also understand that he's a human being, capable of mistakes, right? Now let's just reference this with your own story.
Yeah.
That we've talked about
Right.
multiple different times. You shot a moose a number of years ago in a 50-inch wide spread or 4 brow tines bull restricted unit.
Right.
And you shot a bull guessing on width, and it ended up coming short of 50 inches.
Mm-hmm.
You were lucky enough to have cell reception where you shot that bull, at which point, as soon as you arrived at the kill, you realized this thing is not 50 inches. I'm in trouble. You immediately called
Correct.
the wildlife troopers and self-reported. That is self-reporting. There's a word here that we're going to apply to this that I think is probably the best possible description for honesty. And it especially applies with hunting. We don't like to hunt because there's other people around. We like to hunt because we can be alone or with a group of people that we have the utmost trust and respect with.
Mm-hmm.
Integrity.
Yeah, I was thinking that might be the word you're going to say.
Integrity has always been described to me, and this is kind of what I've always taken it to be, as doing the right thing when nobody's watching.
Mm-hmm.
That means it doesn't matter if there's a wildlife trooper on top of the glassing knob above you watching you, and you know he's there. We've given the illustration before of judging dull sheep on full curl. And I've told several people this that have gotten into sheep hunting. I've always told them, if you're nervous about shooting a ram that you are not 100% sure is legal, the best thing to do to take your nervous decision-making out of it is, what would you do if there was a wildlife trooper sitting there looking at that ram with you, not saying a word? Would you take that chance and shoot that ram if you're not 100% sure?
Mm-hmm.
And most of them would go, well, no, I mean, because he's there. Well, then don't shoot it. It's just that simple.
That's good.
That's integrity.
Yeah.
You're oftentimes off by yourself hunting. It is your responsibility to know the regs, but then you have the side, and this is a little bit of devil's advocate, of nobody else was there. It was just him and his cameraman or him and his wife.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not trying to hide it from them, right? He knows that they're obviously observing him commit these acts. And he's got a social media platform with, at the time that the videos were out, he had a good number of views on some of these hunts. And so it's not like he's one of these guys that shoots an animal and quickly covers it up, and not physically covering it up, but covering it up as in you cut it up and transport it home and bury it in the freezer, and you don't take the hide to the tannery, and you don't take the skull to your taxidermist for a mount. You don't do anything with it for years until you can make sure that nobody knows what happened and that you can get away with hiding it for long enough that nobody can pin any facts or evidence to it. That, in my mind, is the pure version of poaching.
Yeah, calling him a poacher seems very Canadian.
Yeah. Well, yes.
Nothing against Canada, but it seems very Canadian.
So that's part of the thing that we're going to get to here in a minute. So that there are further ramifications to this than just his fines, and that's probably where we differ, you and I, as far as what do I. The first thing that I thought of when I saw this article surface was not probably all the thoughts that you might have had, and that's why I kind of want to discuss this, because as hunters, we look at this. Well, we tend to look at it through one lens. We tend to look at this through one perspective. As hunters, what do we feel? We feel upset because he's out there shooting animals that he shouldn't be shooting. He's taking animals out of the population that possibly could have been hunted legally for somebody else. Certainly the moose seems like that situation. The bear that his wife shot is that situation. Those were animals legal for the taking in a legal hunting area, in a legal hunting season, that he just misappropriated the use of a license and tag for because of regional rules. That would be like if you said, well, in Fairbanks, you're allowed to hunt on your dad's tag, but in Anchorage, you're not. Okay? That's the difference between driving from one province in Canada close to the border into the other. He lives in Ontario, but these hunts took place in Alberta and British Columbia, where the rules are different. The provinces in Canada are like different states, if you will. That's the closest thing that we have to compare them to. They have a completely different set of wildlife regulations for hunting. And even in one of them, these new charges that they're facing include failure to comply with the terms of a permit and hunting or carrying a firearm without a license. He might not need a license to carry a firearm in Ontario, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
He might not. He might. And maybe he just ignored that or forgot about it and got complacent. My point here is that, yes, poacher seems a bit heavy-handed of a term for that.
I agree. When I saw poacher, it just seems a bit far. Now, I haven't met the guy and talked to him about it. Yeah. I wasn't there for the court case. His attitude may have made me think, yeah, no, he was just thought he could get away with all this. Yeah. Right? If he thought he could get away with all of it, poacher's not heavy-handed. Because then he is just being, because guess what? I know people who hunt in the way, you could say in the way that looks like this guy hunted. Yeah. Like, well, what, don't ask, don't tell, what they don't know won't hurt them. As long as everything looks good when we're at the house and they check it, we're good. Yeah. Now, they're not filming their hunts. And I'm not saying they're right. They're not right. They shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do those things. Yeah. But so when I started reading this article initially, when I first saw it, I didn't jump to this conclusion that, oh, great, another guy is being an idiot. Right. I didn't have that initial thought. Right. When I see an article about a hunter, I have mixed emotions. I hope that it's just, and this is a bad thing, I hope it's a smear piece on hunters because it means he didn't mess up.
That's where we're going with this.
But looking at this article, it does not appear to be that way.
Yeah. Well, because it's outdoor life.
Well, it's
outdoor life, in all fairness, is just reporting the facts.
Right. And if it was not for the sheep.
Yeah. The sheep one looks bad.
That's bad.
It looks really, really bad. We live in a day and age of technology on our phones and on our inReaches that is unprecedented in the hunting industry history. We have zero excuse for private land boundaries, for public state land to federal refuge land, BLM land, where access on motor vehicles might be prohibited,
or bear baiting is not allowed. Bear baiting before you could.
Yeah. And guess what? Every year in the regs, there's a section of new regs for that year when the new set of regs comes out. Every year, that's the first thing I go to is what changed. Right. And what areas am I going to be in that are changed from the way that I'm used to just going out. I don't read the regs every time I leave my house to go hunting because I've already read them for that year. But as soon as the new regs come out, I refresh myself and make sure, did they change something in my units that I'm going to be hunting these species? And how do I have to change my mindset? Because once you read it a few times and you refresh your memory and you kind of reset once a reg change comes, it's in your memory. And if you don't keep up with that, that's on you. That's not on the state. That's not on Fish and Game. That's not on the wildlife troopers. They're not going to go out there and hold your hand.
I knew a guy, his father-in-law, last fall, and we may have talked about it on here. He went out. He's an older guy. Probably doesn't use the internet, or if he does, not much. Yeah. Right. Yeah. He said, 40 Mile herd opened this day last year.
Yes.
So he went up there, shot a beautiful caribou. The day it opened the year before, on opening day. I couldn't believe there was nobody up there, and if there were, they weren't hunting, and shot this caribou, brought it home. He and his family cut it up. I heard it was cut up beautifully. Like they had the bandsaw, breakfast sausage, everything was made up. And a few days later, somebody said, "Hey, the season doesn't open till in a day or two." Yeah, and the gentleman I know told his father-in-law. His father-in-law called the troopers immediately, told him what happened, in which case he had to turn in the caribou. And
they gave him a minimum fine. And then complimented him on bringing in all the meat as well taken care of as it was. Yeah. So the story on that, because I ended up talking with that guy as well. Okay. The story on that was his father-in-law gave him the information that the season was open while the youth hunt was open.
Well, it was, but it was also the same day that the regular 40-mile hunt had opened the year before.
It always opens August 10th. Every single year.
Did it open August 10th this year?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yep. I can't remember what day he shot it on.
The fall hunt always opens on August 10th. Okay. I think he was just a few days prior, but there's a youth hunt section that's open before that is a draw permit.
Gotcha.
And so he went out there during the youth season thinking that it was open for everybody and was so shocked that there weren't 2,000 people on the road up there hunting caribou.
Well, that would have been nice, huh?
That's why.
Yeah.
Anyway, so to wrap back around to this, the sheep looks bad.
It does. It looks really bad.
Him going into a unit that's not even open for hunting, A, and killing a ram, that's really bad. And then B, taking a motorized access route to recover it is further bad.
Yeah.
Right? That takes it up a notch. I go back to the dichotomy of this, and you can take it one way or the other. Take, for instance, this now nationally famous case of, we've got weights in fish.
Right.
Okay. We've all heard that story. And frankly, I never get tired of watching that video. Like, that is one of my favorite videos because it's just such instant justice served. And all of their peers were so upset and disappointed that they would rob them of the opportunity to win honestly by them putting weights in fish. That was just a complete undercut of everybody and so dishonest. And they were gaining monetarily from winning these contests.
Right.
I mean, that is completely illegal on multiple levels.
Right. Well, and you think about it. I mean, you and I aren't big fishermen.
No.
I don't see either one of us ever entering a fishing derby like that.
No.
Or, I guess those may not be called derbies, whatever.
Only derby I ever entered. Well, I didn't even enter it. Maybe. But
I mean, I could see, finding out there is a fishing derby or something I was in town for and you didn't have to sign up and it was...
I did enter in a fishing derby.
Okay.
Yeah,
I could see that in a local thing. I happen to be in town when and I happen to be out. Oh, I might be fishing. Well, I might catch a big one, right?
Yep.
So yeah, but I'm never going to be dedicated to heading into my, heading out in the lake at a certain time when the gun goes off, right? Fishing, like that kind of stuff. So I don't necessarily understand where everybody's coming from, except that I understand the dedication they're having. And the amount of not only time and money, but emotional stuff they've got invested in this. I mean, all year they've waited for this and it comes to it and they're doing it. And they feel really good for the people that do win because they know they worked just as hard as they did.
Yeah.
But then when somebody cheated.
Yeah. And takes that away from them. I would compare that to like if we had a big moose derby and somebody went out into Denali National Park and shot a big old bull illegally and then brought it in and submitted that and then they got caught. We would all feel so undercut.
Right. Especially if they'd won multiple contests before.
Yeah. If we found out that somebody had been winning contests and winning prize money and maybe a big Sportsman's Warehouse gift card and all this great prize stuff.
Right.
Because we know how hard we've worked for our bulls, honestly. And they just went out and cheated the system and shot stuff illegally. That's about how I would compare it to something that we would be, connected to here in Alaska. But yeah, so the side of how severe this is, I think, is yet to come. I haven't watched his Facebook video that he put out.
I haven't either.
I'm going to watch it after this. And
I didn't realize it was a video. Like I said, I read the article, though I read it half, looking for, I was at work or something on lunch. And so I just read through it looking for the stuff that was stood out.
Yeah.
And I realized today that it was a video.
Yeah.
And I'll look up, watch the video.
Because you can see a lot in somebody's face and their facial expressions and how they conduct themselves.
And how they word the things.
Right.
And
do they paint themselves in a good light or do they just take extreme ownership of a mistake?
Right. And that, if you haven't read Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, that book will really make you think about who you are as a person.
Yeah.
And, how much of a man are you really? And talking about integrity. Yeah. It's one of the most valuable things I've learned.
Yeah.
In recent times is one of his books. It wasn't his book called Extreme Ownership. It was another one on leadership, but it's phenomenal.
So to me, if we find out down the road that this guy is just putting up a front and playing innocent, then throw the book at him. That's 100% the poacher vibe, if I can use such a word. If they were all indeed honest mistakes, then the worst thing to come about this is not what he's done. It's what's happening because of it. If he went out and did this all intentionally, then that is the worst part of it for me.
Yeah.
Because not only is the outside world going to hate him that are non-hunters, and that will be used against hunting, but it will also make other hunters absolutely despise every single thing he's done, because now he's guilty of intentionally going out and robbing the honest, essentially robbing the honest of opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to look at it in a pure black and white, well, this bear would be here for somebody else to kill had they not killed it. This ram would have been here to kill had they not killed it and gone about it illegally. So the other part of it is that for now, because we don't know the whole story and the whole, I don't know his heart. I don't know his intentions. But for right now, if you just Google this guy's name and after it charged for hunting violation, this is what comes up. The top one is the Outdoor Life article.
Right.
The next one is CBC.
And I typed in his name and then Alpine Carnivore. Got Outdoor Life. Yep. CBC, Field and Stream.
Yep.
City News Vancouver, Vancouver Sun, Vancouver is awesome.
And then there's thehighroad.org.
Okay.
The Vancouver Sun, Yahoo, Vancouver is awesome.
Global News. Rossland News.
Castlegar News. Yahoo News Canada.
Alberta Outdoorsman.
There's a video on YouTube.
Wide Open Spaces. Yahoo News. Reddit.
There's Reddit streams of it. Alberta Outdoorsman Forum. BNN. Wide Open Spaces. Hunt Talk Forum. Alberta Outdoorsman Forum. City News Vancouver.
Yeah.
And the list goes on. CTV News Vancouver. That's the problem. Because if you click on, say, the CBC News, and you look at this, hunting TV show host and wife fined for poaching in BC and Alberta, wildlife officials say. And it goes on to list all these things. On Outdoor Life, and by the way, all these other news media outlets that I've clicked on so far all have photos of him with other game animals that presumably he took under a legal stance. The problem is that Outdoor Life is a hunting media outlet. They are just going to, like I said, report on the facts. Because at the end of the day, Outdoor Life is trying to promote hunting. For every one article about a poacher, there's probably 50 other articles on Outdoor Life about other things that are completely legal, whether it's gun reviews, gear reviews, hunt stories, all kinds of things that are helpful in the hunting industry. But when you go to CBC News, and this is on there, this isn't hunters that this is going to impact. This is non-hunters who are going to point at this, and it gives them ammunition unnecessarily against the hunting community.
You're right.
And we've said this before, hunting has never been at a more precarious point in the history of hunting. Never have we faced so many closures in Alaska and throughout the southern U.S. than we have in recent years. Now, whether those closures are due to actual proven biology statistics about bad weather impacting populations, or whether it's about overharvest and improper management, that's happened as well. It's getting fewer and far between, but it still does happen occasionally. The problem here is that the non-hunters are getting this in their news feed on Saturday morning when they're drinking their cup of coffee and they think, man, those evil hunters, they're all poachers. It's the classic example of trophy hunting. Trophy hunting is exemplified to the non-hunters. Not exemplified. It is portrayed as we go out, we kill an animal, we cut its head off, and we leave the rest of it to rot, which is
illegal,
completely illegal and false, right? At the very lowest level of harvest, we would kill a grizzly bear and just keep the hide and the skull. Of any animal we kill in the big game world, that animal is the one that we would probably, at least in Alaska, get the least overall yield from the carcass. And if that grizzly bear has been eating blueberries in the fall, we're probably going to take the meat too.
Yeah. Which, by the way, when you kill a grizzly bear, you save the lives of many moose and caribou.
Right.
Or, whatever wildlife is in the area.
But explain that to a non-hunter, though.
so many of them say, well, if we just let natural things be, they'll be better, which isn't true.
Right.
Because there's certain things we try to control that we can't, like caribou herds.
Yeah.
And they fluctuate like
crazy. They go
crazy.
up and down, even if,
yeah.
It's a completely different mindset. But to them, looking in on this, that right now, not knowing his motives, not knowing if he's just putting up a smokescreen and saying that he's innocent, which in my books, you are innocent until proven guilty. But this is Canada we're talking about. Now, it sounds like he's already been proven guilty in the 3 previous charges that we've already talked about today. The 2 charges that are in processing right now, we don't know yet. To me, personally, it seems like not having a license to carry a firearm, like that's such a silly thing to be charged with because we live in America. To them, the law is the law. That's like walking into the courthouse at downtown Fairbanks carrying an AR. That's not going to be a happy day for you. You can't do that, right? That's just illegal. So that, to them, they have gun laws that we don't.
However, you could walk past the courthouse in Fairbanks, Alaska with an AR and you'd be completely legal. On the sidewalk.
I suppose you could.
You could. It'd be legal. I don't recommend it. But that's what's great about Alaska.
You might have a few police officers that come by and ask you what you're up to.
Right.
Just out of prudence.
Right.
And
as they should.
Being vigilant. Yeah.
As they should.
I would be keeping an eye out my window if there was somebody walking down my street, my neighborhood with an AR slung over their shoulder. I'd wonder, what in the world is he doing?
It's only happened a few times, maybe once, but I have seen few people with an assault rifle or something just carrying it down the road and you wonder what's going on.
I've seen it.
But you think about it, like, it's completely legal.
If it's legal, then you're fine. But
point being,
aside, those 2 other charges are not proven yet. Yeah. So to me, I'm not tacking those on to his guilt or innocence at this point. I'm just going off of what he's already been charged with. And like I said, everybody's going to have their own conclusion. Mm-hmm. To me, the biggest hurt of this entire situation, the biggest impact is outside of the hunting community. The example that he is or was as a positive impact, having a hunting TV show. His videos were pretty well put together. I enjoyed watching them enough to the point that I would watch every once in a while when he had a new one. It's not like I was some friend of his. I don't know him personally. I've never spoken to him. But he did a good enough job that I watched him.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, it was disappointing when I saw this. When I first heard about it, and then when I saw this actually come out in the news, it was disappointing to me. Like, oh man, really? Like that's just, you should know better. We have OnX maps. We have Go Hunt maps. We have Spartan Forge maps. We have all kinds of mapping software that shows you boundaries.
Right.
And if all else fails, go to your local fish and game agency and talk to somebody and get a paper map and have them show you on the map and red outline it with marker as your hunt area. That would have been the easy high road thing to do. If I have a question about a legality to do with any hunt, I am the first person to tell you. I will call the wildlife troopers if necessary, if I can't get an answer from Fish and Game.
Right.
Usually I'll call Fish and Game and say, hey, I can't find anything directly saying this in the regs. Do you have any interpretation for that? And a couple of times I've been told, well, it's not in here, but it could fall under a different legality to do with the law enforcement in the state. And there was one time that I was inquiring about hunting in an area that Fish and Game didn't know if it was legal or not. It wasn't in the regs as illegal. It's still not in the regs as illegal.
But it doesn't fall under Fish and Game.
And I called the local police department for the area that I was interested in. And I wasn't down there on a trip. I wasn't going there to hunt yet. I was just off season. It was about this time of year, a few years ago. And I called that police department that has jurisdiction in that area. And I said, hey, what are the rules about this? Are there any rules about hunting in this particular area? And they said, well, actually, that falls within a boundary. And they named the boundary of it. And there is no discharge of firearms in this area. And I said, oh, well, that's good.
So then would bow hunting be allowed? Did you not ask?
I don't remember if I asked that or not. Okay. It's not an area that I would want to have a bow.
Okay. Well, it's just thought that comes to my mind, right?
Yeah, the answer that I was looking for was, can I hunt in there? And the short answer was no. And they thanked me for calling. They said, hey, thanks for doing the right thing and being upfront and honest and saying, hey, I don't know the regs about this. There's nothing in the Fish and Game regulations, but the police might know. And they do. They absolutely know. Yeah.
So an interesting thing, there's an article on Field and Stream about the same thing. And at the end of the article, they quote Mark Hall of Blood Origins. And he was on another show, and he was talking about this incident. And he said something I think really kind of like we're talking about, but the way he says it really resonated with me. He said, well, first of all, he said, for folks that are good hunters, there's zero tolerance for this sort of, especially with people who put their hunting adventures on TV. And, and as much as I say, I get like when it's such a small thing where like if you're in your home area, which it's not like this in the US for most things, but if in your home area, you can have a tag for an animal and then let your wife fill that tag.
Yeah.
If that's the way it is. And then or even just a friend. Yeah. Although that seems like a stretch to me. I don't know the area though. Yeah. Right. I don't know I don't know anything about Alberta. Right. Except that it's in Canada.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But it seems like that is an honest mistake.
Yeah.
And that was probably discovered while they were looking at the stuff that happened at the range.
Which never ends well.
Right.
If they are there asking you about one thing and they inadvertently discover more violations, that makes you look like the bad guy big time.
Right. Now, just like Mark Hall says, claim that you don't understand regulations, and it was Crown land boundary lines, which I assume is royal land in Canada.
That would be like federal land for us.
Yeah, don't constitute a valid excuse for his actions, particularly in the digital age where maps and regulations are so readily available to hunters.
Yep.
Everything we do on the land for hunting is subject to invisible boundaries.
Absolutely.
And, the fact he said the excuse made by the guy who got in trouble was that there was no signage.
Yeah.
Which is, if you're off the road system, guess what?
There's no
signage for anything, anywhere, unless you happen to be on a state-maintained trail.
Yeah.
And then there'll be a sign, maybe.
Yeah.
So that is some of the other things that, in a way he says it, the one thing where he said that, yes, I'm at fault. I should have known better. That's good to see. But saying that there's no signage, that's a bad excuse.
Yeah, I agree. To wrap this section up on this particular story, we both agree that this is 100% wrong. He was out of line and it is illegal. And I'm not condoning anything that he did.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to his intent. Did he go out knowing that he was in a non-hunting unit for sheep? Did he actually know that? We may never get a straight answer for that. Right. We might never know. We might never know if he knew the legalities behind using someone else's tag. He claims to have known that it was acceptable when they shot a moose and a bear and they filmed it, right? That, to me, would seem like the opposite of the hunter who kills, I don't know, let's say a whitetail buck out of season and then waits a few weeks and then posts a photo of it on Instagram just because they want bragging rights. To me, that's not the same. If you post a hunt film where you explain what you did in the film, yes, the intent might not have been inherently bad. Right? He didn't go out thinking, I'm going to shoot this moose on someone else's tag and then make a video about it and then post it on my YouTube and Outdoor Channel TV show. That doesn't sound like something that any person with a brain would do. But the end result is it's still illegal. It's still 100% wrong. And we don't condone that. I guess we've already said it, but ignorance is not an excuse. Know your regs. We've done multiple episodes in the past on this show talking about the different intricacies and even the basics, a lot of the basics of how to read the regs for Alaska. If you haven't read the regs and you're planning to come up here and hunt, or even if you already live here and you don't understand how to read the regs, go back and listen to those shows. Get a base knowledge for it. And then if you have more questions, go to your local fish and game office and have them open up the reg book with you and show you what's going on. That's what they're there to do. They are a public resource for hunters and outdoorsmen in Alaska. So, anyway, I figured that was a story that's gotten enough press that it was worth talking about, and just reiterating, just make sure that you're up to speed on your regulations. Do everything above board, because it's not just you who's going to get in trouble if you get caught.
Right.
The entire image of the hunting industry suffers when stuff like this happens. And that's not a good way to ensure that our grandkids are going to be able to hunt and fish. So, we've got another big news story to cover this week, but let's go ahead and take a quick break, and then we'll be right back and talk about that.
Hammer Bullets produces what we at the Northern Hunter consider to be the most premium and best working monolithic bullets on the market today. These bullets are easy to load, extremely accurate, and best of all, they're always in stock and ready to ship. The guys at Hammer designed them so that after penetrating the hide of an animal, it sheds its petals, initiating a massive energy dump while retaining the rear shank for maximum penetration. These bullets are built with 100% focus on how they perform on game, and their proprietary designs produce great BCs with specialized pressure grooves for amazing inherent accuracy and speed. They have a minimum expansion velocity of 1,800 feet per second, which allows for long-range shots, but with no maximum velocity, making them perfect for every cartridge from your granddaddy's old 30-30 to the high-velocity round like the Weatherby 30-378 without having to worry about your bullet failing. To view their expansive selection and find the perfect match for your hunting needs, go to hammerbullets.com and use discount code TheNorthernHunter to drop the hammer on your next adventure.
And we're back.
We are.
Such a long break. Next story we've got for this week, and this one just caught my eye here just today, actually. Also on Outdoor Life. And this is probably my favorite outdoor news source. There's a lot of good stuff on there.
You know, the only website I know that might be one day be as good as Outdoor Life would be thenorthernhunter.com. Maybe one day.
If we ever have enough time and enough writers like Outdoor Life does to keep up on the speed of things.
Right. So, I mean, hey, there you go. Share our show. Let's build this. If you like our content and you want more of it, that's what it takes.
Here's a good title for you. And you don't even know what this one is.
I don't know.
Retired game warden under investigation after shooting a collared wolf in Wisconsin. He claims self-defense.
So I don't know anything about wolf hunting in Wisconsin. Not allowed to shoot wolves, period. Was it a dog?
Was it a husky? Let's do a quick read through of this.
All right. Well, I gotta pull this up. Go ahead. Start reading.
A retired Wisconsin conservation warden and prominent figure in state wildlife issues is under investigation for shooting a collared wolf, allegedly in self-defense. Pat Quaintance, who served on the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources Wolf Management Committee, self-reported the shooting, which took place around 1 a.m. on December 25th, 2023. Merry Christmas, Pat. It goes on to say, Patrick Quaintance called us reporting that he killed a collared wolf that was at their back door. Bayfield County Sheriff Chief Deputy Andy Runice told the Ashland Daily Press. 2 of our deputies responded to the scene at 2:43 a.m. and took possession of the wolf. He said he shot the wolf because it had been hanging around his yard. There was no indication the wolf had attacked a person or pets, according to Runice. The incident took place at Quaintance's rural residence in Bayfield County in the far northern part of the state. It goes on to give a little background about this individual, the retired warden.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes on to a collared wolf is the following section. The Red Cliff Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa have had an active wolf collaring program for years around their reservation, and officials say the wolf killed in the shooting was part of the tribal program. It's unknown if the collar on the 13-year-old female wolf was functioning at the time that the animal was shot. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife agent leading the investigation declined a request for comment, as did U.S. Fish and Wildlife Public Affairs Specialist. The individual also declined to comment on details of the incident, likely at the direction of his attorney. The next section, wolf troubles in Wisconsin, and here's where it kind of gets interesting. Although there have been wolf hunting seasons in Wisconsin before, a 3-day hunt held in February of 2021 resulted in 218 wolves harvested. Which was about 100 more wolves than the state licensed hunters were allocated. The state had created a 200 wolf quota that was split between the state licensed hunters and Chippewa, I believe is the pronunciation of that, tribes, though the tribes did not harvest any due to their cultural relationship with the wolf. Studies have shown that a 200 wolf quota would not impact recruitment of wolves statewide, but questions remain about the state's ability to manage the population if only the state's quota is filled. After this controversial hunt, wolves were returned to the federal endangered species list, meaning they could not be shot for any reason other than self-defense. The shooting of a wolf threatening livestock or pets wouldn't be allowed. That's would not be allowed under the endangered species classification. Among states in the lower 48, only Minnesota and Idaho have more wolves than Wisconsin, but the human population density in relation to wolf numbers is the highest in Wisconsin. This leads to wolf predation, harassment of domestic animals, and other related conflicts with humans. As the investigation continues, Outdoor Life will follow the story and report when a decision is made and whether charges will be filed in federal court.
Oh my.
Pretty interesting, huh?
So, yeah. Starting first with the wolf troubles in Wisconsin. Wolf. Sorry. People who don't like my pronunciation of wolf.
It's whatever.
Yeah, I know. That just say it.
I know I used to give you a hard time about it, but
yeah, right.
Now it's just is what it is.
Sure. So, if there's enough wolves for 218 to be harvested in 3 days.
In 3 days. Isn't that crazy?
That's insane.
Yeah.
The fact that they were put back on the federal endangered species list is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't live there.
Isn't it?
But that is ridiculous. It sounds like, okay, shut it down for the rest of the year. Open it back up next year.
Yeah.
Like, we need to kill some wolves.
Yep. Time to go shoot some wolves.
Yeah.
So,
because how many wolves are harvested in Alaska in a year?
Oh, I don't know.
I got to find this out.
While you're looking that up, I'll read another part of this article. This is actually my favorite part. Quaintance is the former president of the Wisconsin Wildlife Federation, a current member of the Wisconsin Conservation Congress, and the current president of the Wisconsin Association of Sporting Dogs. Because of his former position as a state game warden and because wolves are listed as an endangered species in the upper Great Lake States region, which includes Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Michigan, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is conducting the investigation into the shooting instead of the state DNR. It goes on to say, Quaintance, who is an advocate of hunting with hounds and actively hunts with a variety of species with his dogs, has previously expressed concerns over their safety because of the high population of wolves in his area. He's also reported conflicts with wolves to the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Wildlife Service Division. The WDNR contracts with Wildlife Services to investigate reports of wolf depredation and related complaints. Quaintance has been vocal in his argument against restrictions in the state's DNR wolf management plan. He has supported the idea that wolf quotas should be revisited, and there should be a fixed number population goal of 350 wolves instead of a fluctuating population goal of 800 to 1,200 individuals, as the new management plan requires. He's also opposed to the 6-mile closed harvest area around tribal reservations, which were established at the request of the tribes to protect the wolves that leave reservation lands. The WDNR's interactive wolf depredation threats map shows that on December 18th of 2023, just a few days before the shooting took place, Wildlife Services verified that on multiple occasions wolves had been in close proximity to a residence and outdoor kennel in Bayfield County, posing a threat to dogs kenneled there. The exact resident was not listed, but Quaintance has acknowledged reporting incidents of wolves in his yard and their harassment of his dogs several times. Since his retirement as a Wisconsin warden, Quaintance has been cited for illegal trapping, something that anti-wolf hunting activists have repeatedly pointed out. In 2016, he was cited for trapping too close to bait. He was also cited for trapping in the wrong management unit, though that citation was dismissed after he said the convenience store attendant had entered the wrong zone when he purchased the application for a Fisher tag.
Saying that he had trapping problems, what are the easiest rules or laws in the hunting community in general to mess up on his trapping?
Yeah.
If you can't tell, we're really giving this guy the benefit of the doubt.
This one, I really...
and, maybe legally he shouldn't have shot the wolf.
Maybe.
But it's... That aside...
I'm inclined to say he was innocent.
I mean, so I'm reading about wolves in Alaska. It's estimated there's about 18,000 wolves in Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
About 1,200 are harvested every year.
Every calendar year?
Yes.
Wow.
Or season, but it's still a year, So 12 to 1,300.
So what you're saying is that if Wisconsin had an open season like we did, there wouldn't be many wolves left in Wisconsin.
You're right. However, you know what? When was the wolf hunt? It was in 2018. I'm looking at some of the Wisconsin records on wolves here. So right now, there's around 1,000.
Yeah. Their population management goal is between 800 and 1,200.
Right. In 2017, 2018, it looks like there were like 900.
So they shot 20 to 25% of the wolf population in 3 days.
Yeah.
That's
a lot.
That seems impossible.
You got to keep in mind that it's a lot more people, a lot more tightly packed in Wisconsin than Alaska.
Yeah.
But that's not enough. How in the world you go from you drop down to you say you go from 800 to 600 wolves. I'm not sure exactly. Some of this information is old blurry picture, so it's hard to tell exactly what's going on here. But although it looks like, because it looks like, was it 2018 or 2013?
I believe it was 18.
Because over here it says 2018 905, 2019 914.
Oh, I'm sorry. The 3-day hunt in 2021 in February.
2021.
Yeah, so 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
Okay.
From
now, okay, so in 2021 there were 1,126 wolves.
Mm-hmm.
In 2022 there were 972. There are now, or last year, estimated 1,007.
So they've come back just fine.
How in the world? I mean, they gained 30. But how in the world do you put something like wolves back on the endangered species list when they're still, when the population dropped by less than 20% from the hunt? And the population is still large enough that in given a couple of years, the population went from 914 to 1,034 in 2020.
Yeah.
100 in a year.
Yeah. It sounds to me like there's some politics involved here too. With the tribal lands disputes.
There is
because
that,
they don't want to shoot them because they have cultural value, right? We've heard that a bunch up here. You and I both know people that they're okay with hunting moose, caribou, sheep, bears, but they won't shoot a wolf.
Yeah. I mean, I know one person in particular that won't shoot a wolf, but they're fine with me doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty much what I've encountered.
And they say, oh, no, good for you. Good for you. And it was the kind of person where, I mean, family friend type of deal where it was kind of like, don't tell them I shot a wolf at first because of the way they were.
Yeah.
But then when they did find out, somebody accidentally said something, they said, oh yeah, no problem. Like, no, I'm glad you got good job. Good for you. I just don't want to be there when it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. They just, for whatever reason, they feel a significance, they feel a connection. I don't know what it is, maybe a little too much Hollywood TV. But they don't like wolves getting shot or trapped for that matter. Yeah. There's plenty of those folks out here. I'm sure if you walk through UAF campus here in Fairbanks, you probably wouldn't find a whole lot of supporters for wolf killing.
But then there'd be some guy with a beard and a backpack who was a full-time student who traps.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I just got out of class. I'm going to go run my trap line for
a couple miles from the university, right? Yeah.
Well, obviously not on university land.
Well, I said a couple miles from. In fact, you probably could pretty easily.
Yeah, it's not hard. Anyway, I thought that was very interesting.
That is interesting. I hadn't heard of that one.
The politics of it, in regards to it was in his backyard, seems a little bit hard to believe at first. And what constitutes self-defense?
Right.
Because it clearly states that you can't shoot wolves under the Endangered Species Act if it's harassing pets,
right,
or livestock, which seems crazy.
It does.
Some people really love their dog. I don't have a dog right now, but if I did have a dog and I came out in my front yard and it wasn't grizzly bear season and a bear was on my dog and then it turned and was acting aggressively towards me, well, that's an act of aggression.
Yeah.
He's an imminent threat. He's going to get shot right there. Actually, my buddy, Remington, he lives in another part of the state down south from us. Years and years ago, he was, now he lives out in the middle of nowhere, like out in the mountains. And he got home from working nights and he had a dog at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he got out of his truck and his dog got out of the truck with him, ran down the driveway, and Remington went inside. And, he's bringing in his stuff from work, and he hears his dog just going nuts outside. Comes back outside, peeks out the door, and there's a grizzly bear chasing his dog full speed down the driveway up to the house. It's midnight or so.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had his 300 Win Mag in his car, naturally. Well, he ran back out to his car and grabbed his gun, and the bear then turned and was coming towards him. So he shot it in his front yard. I mean, that's a pretty Alaskan thing to do.
Yeah, it is.
But point being, for us, they're not on the endangered species list, but they're still out of season. He still had to turn the bear in.
Right.
He still did it legally, but he was within his rights. To me, I don't know how much you can claim self-defense on a wolf being in your backyard. I mean, it seems like Fish and Wildlife is just going to say,
we don't know the whole story either.
No.
Who knows if he had called and said, hey, this wolf's hanging out. Can you guys take care of it? And they weren't doing anything.
Maybe it's growling at him and it's coming up to his back door and growling and, you know, I don't know.
Once again, I can reference where I live.
Right.
And I can say if I had a wolf, maybe not if I did, but if I knew somebody who had a wolf problem and for some reason you couldn't shoot wolves, which just seems so far away, right? If there was a wolf in my backyard, I'm going to shoot it. I would work hard to actually hunt down and kill that wolf otherwise.
Yeah. Obviously within season limitations.
Of course, which is
yeah,
pretty easy around here. But it say you couldn't shoot it.
Right.
Well, and maybe you're just worried about the fact that it's hanging out and you know it's a wolf.
Yeah.
What would you do? What should you do?
If it was just passively hanging around, I'd probably call the troopers and say, hey, here's what's going on. If I see this thing around here and it starts acting aggressively, I'm going to shoot it.
Right.
Fairbanks troopers would tell you, yeah, go for it.
They will.
That's defense of life and property.
Right. And, and I've also heard of a story where there was a moose.
Yeah.
That was being aggressive and the people, they didn't have gun or whatever, which, why are they live here? I don't know. But, we really understand other places around here.
We have it so good up here.
Oh, yeah, we do. Anyhow, and so they called the troopers, and the troopers came and I believe shot it. Or no. I don't remember exactly what all was happening. It's been a long time since I've heard the story. But maybe they did have a gun. For whatever was going on, the trooper didn't want to shoot the moose. They actually told the citizen to shoot it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was some weird, he didn't want to do the paperwork or something. I don't know.
Was it in season then?
No, it was out of season. Maybe it was like a wounded moose or something that was wounded and stuck on their property.
Oh, okay.
And the trooper didn't want to shoot it. And I don't remember why it was, or he asked them, I don't remember what the whole story there was.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting.
Somebody I know had a trap line on their property, and they live out, out of town a little ways, but it was out their back lot. And they had a small trap line that him and his kids would kind of maintain, just trying to teach his kids how to set traps. and they caught a moose in it in a snare. Obviously, did not want to go up and set it free because he'd get kicked in the head and killed. So they called the troopers. Troopers came out there, didn't even try to tranquilize it or anything, just shot it. Shot it and gave it to somebody on the roadkill list.
Well, at least it doesn't go to waste that way.
Yeah, oh yeah, it didn't go to waste. And it was in the wintertime too. So it's not like it's going to spoil. They're going to take care of it right there and then. But yeah, I mean, in situations like that, the troopers understand there is a danger, that there is an inherent danger to having wild animals around your property. But this guy, you know, it's kind of portrayed that he has a predisposition against wolves.
It is.
You know,
and it sounds like he has a history even in the department of being anti the whole not hunting wolves thing.
Yeah.
You know, and just wrap back around to this because, you know, I'm not there, but the Endangered Species Act, while I do believe it has a place, I believe it oversteps its usage and its purpose.
Yeah.
Not most of the time, but in many, many areas, especially, I believe it becomes a political weapon. And I think this is...
I was just going to say, they have weaponized the Endangered Species Act against hunting.
They're trying to use it on an island here in Alaska, right? We've talked about that.
Yeah.
And I mean, the goal of the Endangered Species Act is, okay, there's, you know, such a small amount of this species living in a state or in an area that they are, you know, a bad winter and they're dead, right?
Yeah.
So we are going to step in, make the regulations so tough that, if you see one attacking your dog, sorry, bye puppy. You know, we're going to lose this species. Right. Okay, I understand that.
Yeah.
But as soon as that population gets to a place where it can be managed by the state, the goal of the Endangered Species Act is to turn it back over to the state.
That ain't happening anymore.
It does occasionally.
Yeah, but when it comes to wolves and grizzly bears in the lower 48, it ain't happening.
Wolves and grizzly bears are like worshipped by non-hunters. And it's only because they don't know anything about them.
Yeah.
But like you say, Hollywood and whatnot. But
I figured that was worth a read.
You're right, it was. And it really...
Kind of a thought-provoking thing.
It really gets my hackles up a little bit.
To me, that's okay. There's a wolf in his backyard. It was acting aggressively. If we take his word at face value, right? Innocent until proven guilty, because unlike our first story this week, this guy is in the US of A.
Yeah.
He has rights. He was legally in possession of a firearm, and he exercised, which under his interpretation and his statement was self-defense, which is the only way that you're allowed to kill an endangered species listed animal. He is claiming self-defense. So to me, he's innocent until proven guilty. Yeah. This is America. So I hope he is innocent, and I hope it doesn't turn into this whole ordeal where he becomes a smear campaign for the media to say, look at this. They're just shooting wolves because they're in your backyard. That's a beautiful animal. He wasn't hurting you. He wasn't hurting anything. Well,
that's an interesting term that's worked its way into our language, isn't it? Scapegoat.
Yeah. Bummer.
Yeah.
It's kind of a tough term.
It is, but I think it's proper usage.
Yep. He becomes the martyr.
This has been a depressing episode.
Well, let's get into some listener Q&A.
Okay, these better not be depressing questions.
This one, moving on to our main topic, believe it or not. I don't know. There's just something about talking about the news that I enjoy.
This is one of those episodes that's more just, there's things to talk about. Yep. There's some questions to answer. Let's just see where it goes.
Yep. We've got some things that we're interested in, and well, we hope you like it. And if not, then tune in next week. I think there's a lot of people that do find this informational and helpful.
I think they do.
And just reading an article is one thing, but hashing it out amongst yourselves with like-minded people brings out perspectives that you might not think about otherwise. And I think that is valuable.
When I listen to podcasts that are put together in the style that ours is, right? The roundtable discussion of things. I do really enjoy this stuff. Sometimes even more so than the main topics.
Oh yeah, me too.
These things, they're well, for one, it's current.
Yeah.
It's
current events. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Current events. It's relevant information, and hearing people's opinions and also forming your own about the whole thing that's going on is very, very interesting. And, and it's what most of us as Americans like to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's the same reason that, hey, I mean, regardless of your political affiliation, talk shows and podcasts and news programs are as big as they are. because people like to learn.
Yeah.
And maybe most of us like to learn from the side that we agree with, but
yeah,
it's interesting how
here's something that I've learned over the years of being more and more in the hunting industry space, right? There's always the cliche of the know-it-all and someone that has all the answers and they never do any wrong. Anything you tell them, they will fight back if it's not what they already think and that they've already said that they agree with. The thing that I think is important to learn is most things are subject to interpretation and timeline of application.
Yeah.
What people thought about the rules of the land and the law of man 1,000 years ago applied to what we know now and how we live our lives now.
Right.
We look at them as, whoa, those guys were wild. Like that is like theft was punishable by getting your hand cut off. We look at that now and we say, well, that is brutality in the justice system.
If somebody stole and the first offense was slap on the wrist, second offense was a finger, and the third offense was a hand,
there'd probably be a lot less theft.
There'd be a lot less theft, right?
Yes. But principle of the judgment applied aside,
we cannot interpret the past by today.
Exactly. And that is getting off on a whole different tangent, which we really shouldn't go there. But that's an excellent point. My whole point of saying all that is I have learned that even the things that I learn hunting and that I think to be true, anytime I listen to anybody else talk about that subject, I perk up. Because there have been several things that I've thought, I think I know how to do that pretty well.
Right.
And then I hear somebody else has been doing it for 40 years talk about it, and I go, whoa, that's a completely different way of thinking about that. And then I apply some of that knowledge from their perspective. I'm not so full of my own opinion to think that I could never be proven wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I enjoy listening to the current event situations, whether it's in the hunting industry or political news. I'm not a political junkie, but I think it's smart and patriotic to know what's going on in your country.
There's a lot to be said. In the hunting industry it's interesting because there are people from every walk of life.
Yes.
And from every political affiliation.
Yep.
While it does tend to be more so one than the other.
Yep.
There are people, especially you could say upland game bird hunters.
Yeah.
Right. There's very specific niches, but they're still hunters, and there's still something I can connect with that individual on, even though we may not agree on anything else.
Absolutely.
And in just like the fact that you can learn something from anybody.
Yes.
It may be a lesson of how not to do something.
Yeah.
But you can learn something from anybody.
Yep.
And having the idea that you can't, a great example is myself.
Yeah.
Okay. I was, as a teenager especially, I was the kid that thought he knew everything. And I think most teenagers are that way, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's the classic stage of life.
I thought I was the guy that knew I didn't know everything. But in thinking I knew I didn't know everything, I thought I knew everything. If that, in that loop there.
That's like saying that you're the most humble person. Well, and saying that you're not humble.
Right. Or the guy at work that says he handles stress really well. Yet in reality, he's the guy that doesn't handle stress.
Right.
But, I, when I was a teenager and growing up, even from being as young as I can remember, I was shooting bow and arrow and rifle. Right. And just from shooting even a rifle from a really young age, you develop a skill with that. Most of the time, sure, you might have some bad habits, but most of the time you develop a skill in that in shooting, right? And I had that. Just kind of a knack to know how to aim and how to shoot, especially when I was hunting. I didn't have so much luck at the range.
Yeah.
But when I was hunting, I almost always had good shots. And, it just was that, you do what you always know to do. You line up, right? All that kind of stuff.
Right.
But when I allowed myself to start listening, wait a minute, if I apply more knowledge to these things.
Right.
I mean, and you argued with me about bullets for years.
Yeah.
And I would say, oh, well, this has always worked. Why wouldn't it work now? It's a great bullet. Everybody's used it.
Yeah.
And that was my argument.
Yeah.
But then when I start to see the difference,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and so for a long time I hunted with barns, right? Which are a great option because they were available and they are here and there.
Yeah. Pre-COVID.
Now, and now I hunt with hammers and I reload and I'm in, and I get into ballistics and numbers and all this kind of stuff.
Well, you and I reloaded together last weekend.
We did. But it went from, okay, well, I'm a pretty good shot.
Right.
And I don't need much else. I'll buy whatever box of ammo is cheapest that says hunting. Right. And now I look at people like that and I say, you did what? Right.
Right.
You shot that moose with what?
Yeah.
Oh, burger. They say hunter on them. Well, there's a reason why you had to shoot it 5 times.
Yeah.
And that's a true story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, but because I applied a skill to now knowledge, once I was willing to learn, and once I realized there was things I didn't know, shooting knowledge and ballistics.
Yeah.
And, and it was kind of a slow progression all the way, until I was over the deep end, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing goes for anything in the hunting industry. You can take a skill that you may have grown up with.
Yeah.
I think it goes for all of life, but we're hunters. Take a skill that you may have grown up with, like shooting.
Yeah.
And once you apply the knowledge of how to do it properly and perfectly and to run the numbers, even if you're not great at math and you're not into all the BCs and the ballistics, there's enough on the internet to get in big trouble, but there's enough on the internet to figure out how to do a pretty stinking good job. And I guarantee somebody who can throw you a ballistics chart when you send them a new box of ammo you bought.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Understanding what the bullets do, understanding your drops, understanding, hey, a zero lock turret on a loophole scope and how beneficial that can be, especially if that's as far as you want to go.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's a great option because you don't have to get into really long range shooting. You don't have to reload. You don't have to do anything but buy a Tikka, a $500, maybe $600 now loophole scope and the right box of ammo.
Yeah.
And you can be extremely effective.
And apply the basics of what you already know, but be willing to learn more.
Right. And be so much more ethical than the guy that just bought the cheap $500 rifle that came with the scope.
Yeah.
And the cheap green and yellow box of ammo.
Yeah.
And said, oh, everybody else hunts with this, why won't it work?
It will work in some situations, but you could be doing it better.
Right.
Here's how I like to look at learning. And this is something that, again, you figure out over time. And I'm still learning a lot. I learn researching for this podcast, for writing articles.
Yeah.
I learn a lot from a lot of other people.
I learn while we're running an episode and you and James are talking about something and I'm going, oh.
Yeah. This is how I look at it. My wife makes bread at home. And so it's seemingly multiple times a week, she's got dough rising on the kitchen counter. Have you ever seen somebody letting dough rise in a tube with a cap on it?
They're called WAP biscuits. That's what my dad called.
Okay. Aside from the tube of cardboard cinnamon rolls that you can buy at Safeway, which are delicious, by the way.
Yeah.
The orange ones especially.
Oof.
Those are super tasty.
I'm hungry now.
No, I'm hungry. But you never see dough rising to make bread in a container with a lid on it.
Right.
Why is that? Because it doesn't allow for growth.
Yeah.
It doesn't allow for it to grow. It always has an open top on it, maybe a towel over it.
Right.
If you have a skill set that you learn from a young age or as an adult, and you learn the basics and you figure it out, and then you stop accepting guidance,
right. As soon as you think you've learned everything about it,
that's like putting the cap on it.
Right.
And that information is never going to multiply. You're never going to get more to add to that. But if you're willing to listen, and like we've said before, you don't have to take everything that we say or anybody else says and latch onto that as if that's your belief and that's your value. You don't have to do that. But be willing to listen to anybody else's opinion who's, somewhat reputable. Obviously, you want to listen to reliable sources. You don't want to be listening to guys that are just getting into it and are just saying what they've read on the internet that they themselves are still learning. But you need to be willing to learn. And that the best hunters and outdoorsmen that I know that are far to my senior in experience and years in the field hunting all over the world, some of them. The thing that they all have in common is they come off of every hunt learning a lesson. That's part of the fun in it for us, is we go out and then we come back and you and I will exchange stories. Even after moose camp this year, we'd meet up at night and go, man, well, I did this and I had this happen. And well, I called out this cow. And how come a cow came into that call? Or I had this bull respond and he popped out and I can't believe he came in. It was first week of September, and all these things that we're just analyzing, basically data to learn that we know how to hunt. We know the basics of how to do it. And you go out and you apply those principles, but then you have to be willing to adapt to your situation and learn what's going on. That, I think, is the most rewarding part about the media world today in the hunting industry. There is so much good information out there. There are so many people that really know what they're talking about. And you can find podcasts or YouTube channels or websites with articles that are specific to one topic. Yeah. If you want to hear a podcast all about ballistics, go listen to the Hornady podcast. Yeah. And those guys know their stuff. And it's not just a Hornady commercial either.
Right.
Obviously they're biased.
They're going to talk about their bullets.
But they talk about actual facts and proven statistics and data that they have done.
It's funny,
specifically for ballistic
even
application.
We're not a huge fan of the brand and the product, but the Vortex podcast.
Yeah. The Vortex podcast is an excellent resource.
It is.
I listen to it.
Yeah. I even have a Vortex scope.
Yeah.
Right? Now, it's not on a high-powered rifle.
Yep.
Well, I guess technically it'd be considered a high-powered rifle, but it's not on a big, heavy rifle because I don't trust it on that. Right?
Yeah.
But that aside, the process of learning, and I heard this a while back in a book or something, I don't remember, but the process of learning new things, and it happens for children a lot more, right? Yeah. But it's taking information that we thought we knew, breaking it down and replacing it with new.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not always just because you're listening to somebody doesn't mean that's happening.
Yeah.
But the process of learning requires you to break down pre-existing assumptions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and you brought up the rising bread, right?
Yeah.
Why does bread rise? Do you know?
Because of the yeast.
Well, yeah, but how does the yeast work?
It's a reaction.
It breaks down portions of the bread by consuming it. And then when the yeast itself, somebody's going to correct me for something I mispronounced, but the general idea is correct.
You're already saying more than I know.
Okay, the yeast breaks down, eats portions of the bread, right?
Yeah.
They break that down and they expel it as a gas, an alcoholic gas, actually.
Right.
And it creates little bubbles in the bread, and that makes it expand, and that's why it makes it light and fluffy
porous,
as opposed to a hard lump
pilot bread.
Yeah, except that pilot bread is actually probably partly raised too, but that's what you would call unleavened bread.
Unleavened bread.
Yeah,
yep.
Right,
that's what I was going for. Yeah.
But anyhow. So actually, your I remember what the word is now, but your example of bread braising is even more accurate than you realized, because the whole process of bread rising is something new being added, breaking down something so that it can expand and make room for more. Right. And that's what we have to do. If you're not willing to accept the fact that you don't know everything about a topic, right? And hey, part of this is realizing that you probably do know more about a lot of topics in hunting than people you're talking to do. And you should be willing to share that.
Yes.
And to do it in a way that doesn't come across as I know better than you, but as, well, actually, hey, this is the way this works. And I think you'll have a lot more success if you do this.
Right.
Trying to help people out, trying to help them learn, hey, we don't want more wounded animals in the woods.
Right.
So helping people understand the difference between bullets and how to make a good shot, trigger placement, or finger placement on the trigger.
Yeah.
Just all those little things make a huge difference.
Yeah. People love to dog on the gear nerds. But at the end of the day, the gear nerds are some of the...
They do?
Some of,
some people do, yeah.
A portion of the guys that I'm sure both of us could name off that are, relatively well known in the hunting world are also gear nerds. But they're gear nerds because they want their equipment to be so perfect and so dialed that when they need it, it's functional. Right. And this is not all to say that we know everything, because we certainly don't. And we've learned things doing this podcast. We learn new things all the time. And we're still, in the grand scheme of things, pretty young fellas. All three of us on this podcast are, relatively speaking, pretty young guys.
Mm-hmm.
But we've learned enough that we've been able to bring other new hunters in and help mentor them and teach them how to do it. And we all wish that we might have had possibly more mentorship at some stages in
certain areas, for sure.
And we didn't have a resource like this.
Mm-hmm.
Hunting podcasts weren't out there and so widely proliferated as they are now.
Right.
So we wanted to bring a platform specifically about Alaska information. And that's why we say contact us on our email or on our social medias, because we've gotten information on there from listeners that we've read an email and they've said, hey, I noticed that you said this, but here's something else to consider.
Mm-hmm.
And we've learned stuff from listeners.
We have.
And that is great. We're learning just like you are. And that's part of the great thing about this information age that we're in, is you don't have to read a Chilton's manual to fix your truck anymore. Oftentimes, you can find a lot of things on YouTube.
Although sometimes that's the best resource there is. Break out the old book.
I've done the old Chilton's manual at times. I haven't used it in a long time. But that's the point, though.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to go to a book about hunting to read about it. You can listen to a podcast and you can interact with these people. You're not having to write a letter in and hoping to get a response back from a writer somewhere. You can send out an email or an Instagram message and get a response. So sharing that information is very valuable.
I got a text today from a guy, a listener to the podcast, letting me know some information about some of the guns I've talked about that I have that may be projects and this and that. He's texting me, hey, this is some information. Here's a link I found to some stuff you might be able to use, which, hey, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. The fact that you guys reach out and say, hey, heard you were talking about this. Maybe this will help you out.
Yeah. That is my favorite part of doing this show, is listener interaction.
It makes it some of the best listener interaction is when, when somebody writes in and says, hey, I took your advice and this is my animal. That is the best.
We've gotten that a number of times.
We have. Or just like, hey, I love your show. I'm a young teenager.
Yeah.
Like, this is my question. What about this in Alaska? I want to do this with my dad one day. And hey, it makes me think of when I was that age.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I didn't have this resource then.
Right.
But it's so gratifying to know that I can have that influence now. It also makes me say, I want to make sure we do a good job here. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into our first listener question that we're going to tackle.
Okay.
We have two that we're going to quickly tackle here. This guy wrote in on our Instagram. His first name is Tristan. We'll just leave the rest of it out. He says, Blacktail questions. I'm looking at 2025 buck and duck. I'm about ready to book either, and he names a charter company out of a particular location in the Gulf of Alaska. But it has me thinking, is this as good or better of a choice than Kodiak or the Southeast Panhandle? We would prefer to hunt with a bow, but we'll bring rifles just in case things get tough. Smart move. The multiple bucks option is attractive for me in the Gulf hunt, but Kodiak seems to be much more popular. Any advice a guy should consider before picking an area or charter to go with? Well, I know the charter company that he's talking about. We're not going to name it and, give them too many phone calls because they're pretty booked out. And he's talking about 2025, I believe he said. So that's the following year from now. Deer hunting varies pretty drastically as far as population densities and
terrain.
Hunt styles based on terrain. The Gulf down in like Prince William Sound, where he's talking about, kind of in the middle of the Gulf of Alaska. Parts of it, you can access it by boat from the mainland to these islands that have a blacktail population. Those hunts are going to be somewhat similar to Southeast, but still a little bit different in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about that. And then Kodiak is another question because it's more popular, he said. Mariah and I have been deer hunting 3 times together now.
Sounds right. Yeah.
I think you've been down there 3 times to the Southeast, where I've been going for a number of years now. And the hunting down there it seems easy when it's good.
Right.
But when it's bad, it seems like the hardest thing you can do in Alaska as far as just finding animals.
Yeah.
When it's bad, when it's the wrong time of year, you don't even think they exist.
Yeah.
And so time of year is very, very important. Number one thing is, I would say, if you're not planning to do an alpine hunt early season, like in the August timeframe, which it doesn't sound like he's trying to do. He's taken a boat charter out to hunt from a boat and then, come back onto the boat and hunt, each day off of the vessel, which is a very popular way of doing those types of hunts these days. There's a lot of guys on YouTube, a lot of channels, a lot of, content guys on there that have shown that style of hunt. And that's an easier way to do it. It's easier to handle bad weather when you can just come back and sleep in a warm, dry room on a boat in a cabin.
Right.
You can dry all your stuff out and have a nice hot meal and have fresh home cooked food and have a chef on board and you're all taken care of. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the life of Riley. That's great, and I'm all about that. I'm glad that opportunity exists for folks. That being said, the cost of that hunt that you're going to do in the Sound, Tristan, versus what you would pay to do that same type of hunt on Kodiak, you're going to pay more to go to Kodiak to shoot fewer deer because the bag limit is 1. And I believe, because he referenced there only being a 1 deer limit, he must be a non-resident.
Or is it 1 buck?
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's what I meant. But yeah, specifically speaking, it is buck only. But it is 1 buck on Kodiak, or however many tags they get in the Sound. I don't remember off the top of my head how many they can shoot in Prince William Sound. But in Southeast, they can shoot 2. So it's probably a 2 buck limit in the Sound if it's the same as Southeast. But no matter. That's part of his decision process. And then also terrain and huntability. I would say as far as huntability goes, Kodiak is probably going to be a better option.
Especially for bow.
Yeah, especially archery. The vegetation and the undergrowth and the blowdown and the deadfall and the stumps and the alders and the Devil's Club is situationally prohibitive to archery in Southeast and in Prince William Sound. I've spent a good bit of time in both areas. I've not deer hunted in Prince William Sound, but I've seen quite a number of deer in different areas hunting other animals. It's comparable to Southeast. There's not as much alpine. There's not as much elevation to be gained or lost. It doesn't seem like in Prince William Sound. It seems like a lot of the deer probably spend more time in and out of the trees, even in the summertime. The advantage of going to Southeast down by the Panhandle and possibly, getting a charter to fly up to an alpine lake, like what Ryan Lampers and his daughter and his cameraman and my wife and I did in August, which we'll have Ryan on here real soon to talk about that and kind of break that hunt down in detail with him and the cameraman, the fellow that filmed that hunt, Kayam. We'll have them on here real soon in an upcoming episode, so watch for that. But the advantage of that hunt is that you have a lot more stark variance in the terrain down there. It's very, very steep in areas and it goes up quick from the water. And there seems to be more alpine exposed on those mountains down in Southeast in certain areas than in Prince William Sound. It does exist, but it seems to be more brushy farther up than it does in Southeast parts. Yeah, the brush line seems to go up a lot farther down there. Like in Prince William Sound, I've seen spots where there are mountain goats up in the alpine, and there's only 200 vertical feet of elevation that is alpine before it peaks out. 200 feet down from the peak, the trees start. And so the goats are even in and out of the trees. That makes deer hunting in the alpine pretty tough. If you're archery hunting and you really want to do it with a bow, I probably wouldn't recommend that hunt in Southeast in August. It's really open.
Yeah, well, especially if you're not can't afford to pay a charter to fly in or something.
That's an added cost, and that's going to be even more expensive than hiring a charter on Kodiak.
Because trying to, you guys talked to Jeff Lund, about this
from Catch Can,
and he does it. He does hike ups.
Yep, sea to summit.
But the amount of effort, that's going to take for somebody who doesn't know anything about the terrain, or maybe you do know a little bit about it, but the area you're going into, I know we've looked at mountains and talked about climbing them and said, no.
So actually, there are a couple of videos online.
Okay.
I would encourage you to go look up on YouTube. I believe it was Vortex that filmed it.
Oh, really?
And they did a hunt where they were combining rifle and archery for blacktails. And they got landed at a lake somewhere on or just off of Kodiak. And they got landed, at least it looked like a sizable lake. Got landed in a beaver, I believe, on floats. And they hiked from the shore up above Alpine, pitched a light camp, and then hunted up there for a number of days. And they killed some deer with archery equipment and with rifles. Mm-hmm. But the terrain there looks very different and a lot more broken. You have more hills to kind of use and hide behind for cover. At least the area that we flew over in Southeast, it seemed like it was just open. And when you get up top above the brush line, there's just not a lot of great cover for archery hunting. Now, on other islands and in different areas, I'm sure even on that island, there are spots that it is perfectly doable with a bow. Someday I might try it. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but for a first-time deer hunt to Alaska, I would probably steer you more towards the Kodiak option if you're stuck on archery.
If you're stuck on archery, Kodiak option. If you really care about ducks,
yeah, I
would say the charter.
Yeah. Now, that being said, there are a lot of charters on Kodiak. I think it's Rogue Charters that's run by Jeremy Rusink. He's an outfitter. He has Rogue Expeditions. And he's got a real booked out charter business. I mean, he does a lot of these boat-based, same style of hunts. They're probably going to cost you a little bit more. It's going to cost you a bit more to fly to Kodiak rather than flying to mainland and then going to a town in the Sound or flying to Southeast. That's probably going to be a cheaper option for you because it's a shorter flight from Seattle and on up, which is usually where you end up connecting from to get to Alaska. But the Kodiak option, the terrain just seems to be more inclined to better opportunities with a bow.
Yeah. Well, and I think you have more the patterns and where the deer move are a lot more consistent.
Well, they're all out in the open, so you can see them. You can glass them.
Their trails and the consistency with which they move on them, I think, are more consistent on Kodiak.
I think they're probably as consistent anywhere, but we just don't see them moving around because they're in the old growth.
Right.
They're always in the trees.
They're in the old growth, like you said. And when you mentioned, you had a whole list of obstacles.
Yeah.
That they're always moving around.
Yeah. And that little deer that weighs 120 pounds or 130 pounds,
which isn't that little,
is going to disappear in that old growth. I mean, you're talking stumps as big around as a Volkswagen Beetle. And
you can't see over when you're standing next to.
And they're everywhere. There's blowdown everywhere on those islands, whether it's Southeast or Prince William Sound.
Yeah.
That kind of terrain is just really hard to do with a bow.
Remember the first year we were down there?
Yes.
And we thought we were going to hike around the island?
Vividly.
And we hiked along the beach and we came to a little cliff and we climbed up into the woods and turned around after about 20 yards.
Yeah. Said, nope, that is a wall of brush. And there are some spots where you can see from the beach and just walk right in and it's all old growth and it's like a golf course underneath those trees. It's just green moss. But those places are few and far between. And until you've spent time hunting in that thick vegetation and learning how to spot old growth areas and where that less dense vegetation and undergrowth is going to be, I would probably say for a first hunt, I wouldn't recommend doing that necessarily. Now, the advantage of going with a charter in Prince William Sound by boat is going to be that they know the areas.
I was thinking that.
That is a hunt charter. They know where they're taking you. They know where they've had success in the past, and they know where some good areas are. I'm not saying that it's not a good option. And because of the cost, it might be the best option for you. If cost isn't a problem, and if you would rather have a better chance at one good buck than two mediocre bucks, then go to Kodiak. If you would rather have a chance at a buck with better genetics and bigger headgear, go to Kodiak. Kodiak, per the number of deer shot, has the highest number of big bucks harvested.
I think if it was me personally picking this, knowing what I know, having hunted where I've hunted, I would probably do the Prince William Sound charter.
You think?
I think so.
Why is that?
Well, for one, opportunity to more than one deer.
Yep.
I'm not necessarily into it for the size of the rack right now.
Right. Yep.
For me, it's meat. It's
Yep.
phenomenal meat. I want as much of it as I can get.
And that's a huge thing to consider.
And the second thing is, I think it's probably, in Kodiak might be fine for ducks, but I feel like the charter option, you're going to be more set up to do either or on a given day.
Yeah. So a lot of the ones that even exist on Kodiak, they do have that either or option. And there's a lot of fishing too. A lot of those charters that you'll take on Kodiak,
that's true.
They do a deep sea fishing, duck hunting, and deer hunting combo. And there's plenty of videos out there. There's all kinds of guys that have done that and filmed it and done a good job of showing that. I think Born and Raised has done that a few times. I know the Mountain Project has done that trip many, many times, and they do a great job of filming that particular hunt. I know Solo Hunter has done a bunch of deer hunting out there. Tim Burnett and Remy Warren, they've both got some films out there from deer hunting on Kodiak, and that will give you a pretty good idea of the terrain and topography and just the lay of the land and how the hunt is going to go, just based on the terrain features, because that's going to dictate whether or not you get a chance with a bow. If you're going to Prince William Sound, and you know what, maybe they have fishing at that charter company too. I haven't looked into that particular side of it.
I think that it would just be there.
Yeah, it probably does exist.
It might just be get your fishing license and stuff because we've got the gear on the boat.
Right, exactly. And that might be the case. I don't think they're a bad company. They are relatively new overall. They've only been in business here for just a few years now, as far as I'm aware. And they'd have a pretty good success rate. But, for quantity of deer, Prince William Sound, for sure. If you go to Southeast, those boat charters are harder to find. I don't think I know of more than 2 boat-based deer hunting charter services, guide operations that operate in Southeast, because the logistics and the cost of Southeast is very, very high. These guys in Prince William Sound are mainland-based. Their raw material cost of operation is much lower. Their fuel cost is lower. Their grocery cost to supply the boat is lower.
I think part of the reason I would pick Prince William Sound is just the idea of the way the logistics of that hunt would work.
Yeah.
It intrigues me a lot.
It does.
I really like that idea.
Yeah.
And the fact that I can get up in the morning and decide, they don't always work this way, but a lot of times you can get up in the morning and decide, point me in the direction where the ducks are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Take me to shore, put out some decoys, and let's go shoot ducks today.
I don't know enough about the Kodiak charters to know if they work as well that way. Yeah. It might be very much more like, you got to, these 2 days you're hunting, these 2 days you're duck hunting, these 2 days you're fishing.
Yeah.
Right. Because these 2 days you're fishing, somebody else is hunting in the spot you're hunting. Right. Yeah. I don't know how all that works.
The nice part about the boat charters is that they're mobile. If the hunting is bad for 2 days in one spot, then they'll just move.
I think the logistics of it as a resident just make a lot of sense to me.
They do.
That's probably where a lot of that comes from. Coming from out of state, if it was affordable, if I could afford it, I think I would choose Kodiak coming from out of state.
Yeah.
That would be my recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably going to shoot a nicer buck. You're pretty much guaranteed you'll be able to get it with your bow. Not guarantee, but it's a lot better chance.
Yeah, a much better chance.
Because you'll be able to set up in a spot that is good for bow. The fact hunting out of a boat in Prince William Sound, being able to find a spot where you'll be able to set up with a bow is going to be a lot harder. And you're going to give up on stalking them after the first dozen stalks or 2. And you say, okay, I got to shoot a deer.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's something that I would say too, is if any bow hunter that says, I'm willing to shoot a rifle, take the rifle for the first deer then.
Yeah.
Just get the first one out of the way.
Especially if you can shoot.
If you don't care and you can shoot 2 and you decide to go to Prince William Sound where you can shoot 2 deer, then I would probably advise you to just take the rifle. Maybe if you're going with a partner, he carries a rifle, you carry a bow.
Yeah.
Whoever's up to shoot with a bow first brings their bow. And then worst case scenario, if you see a buck that you really want dead, then you can say, hey, give me the gun. I'm going to shoot this one with a gun. And then you can hold out for an archery buck. And then if you don't get one, you're not as bummed out because you already shot one with a rifle.
Right.
You've at least done it. You've at least got the meat. You've at least got the experience and the trophy out of it. So I don't think that one is inherently better than the other. It just depends on what you're looking for in your experience.
Yeah.
How set are you on archery? How set are you on your cost restrictions? If you can't afford the Kodiak trip, if you look up those charters and you can't afford the Kodiak one, then Prince William Sound is what I'd recommend. Out of those three options, I'd recommend the Sound, just for that situation.
Yeah.
And yeah, I as far as time of year, I would definitely steer you towards November. Definitely November. Try to hit the rut.
Yeah, that makes it easier.
Because there's nothing more heartbreaking than spending a week hunting deer
and not seeing a deer
in October and not seeing a deer.
Yeah, I know.
Or seeing them and they don't respond to the call.
Or seeing tracks and no deer.
Yeah.
I joked with you for, like, I don't believe they exist. I haven't seen one yet.
Yeah. They were not to be found the first time that you and I went, but that was in October.
It was.
Wrong time of year. All right. Let's take a quick break and then we'll come back and hit our last question and we'll wrap this one up.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to StealthyHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
All right. Our final question for this week's episode is brought to us by Caleb, who has written to the show multiple times, and we've answered his questions on the podcast several times. He says, "Hey again, guys. I'm going to be in the market for some new boots soon and was curious for your opinion or opinions. I'm looking at either some Hanwags or some Schnees, and I'm looking for a do-it-all boot from spring bear to training hikes and backpacking in the summer, from road hunting to hiking 20 miles in for sheep and goats starting in spring, going through summer and into fall and early winter. I've heard that insulated boots are great until they get cold, and then they're harder to get warmed back up, and getting cold feet is probably going to happen on most Alaskan hunts, at least for me. Do you have any opinions on the matter, whether it be running no insulation, light insulation like 200 grams, or just going with a 600 gram insulated boot and dealing with hot feet in warmer weather?"
I'll answer that last part of that question real quick. No.
I don't do any stand hunting, all spot and stalk, so the most I sit still, is while glassing, and even then I probably don't sit still as long as I should. Thanks for the advice. Well, appreciate it, Caleb.
Yeah, good question.
Came to the right feet because you came to the right place because we've all gone through several pairs of footwear. That's what I was trying to say there. You came to the right feet. I've never said that one before. It is getting late. We've been in here a little while.
We have been.
So non-insulated, mildly insulated, or super insulated.
Well, like I said before, rule out. If you're wearing them in the summer, rule out that last one as a definite.
600 grams of insulation is far too much.
Except for cold winter hunts.
Except in Alaska, when you get into that October time frame, then you'd want those, but that's
when you have a consistently below freezing temperature.
That is a separate pair of boots.
Yeah.
It needs to solve that problem.
Yeah.
You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't cover all those bases with one pair of boots.
Right.
It's just not possible. That's why most hunters up here have a lot of different boots for a lot of different seasons. Whether it's rubber boots for late season that are heavily insulated, those also handle a lot of the snow and the late season muck that we get in moose season, versus a pair of uninsulated boots to run, say, for spring bear baiting, just running in and out of the bear baits, or spot and stalk bear hunts in that June time frame. August sheep hunting, it's usually pretty warm. You can get snow, but for the most part, you're not going to have consistently super freezing temperatures in August. Although you can draw that straw in the Brooks Range sometimes. I shouldn't say that. Any mountain range in Alaska can get snow in August, and I've had it happen across a few of them. But it usually doesn't stick. Usually warms up and goes away. As you get later into August, those temperatures are going to be getting down below freezing up high at night. And in September, obviously, you're hoping that it frosts on a regular basis during moose season. So that's a hunt that you're probably going to want something in that 400 gram insulation range. I'll pitch this one to you first.
Okay.
What do you think, Mariah? If you were going to own one pair of lace-up hunting boots, not rubbers, not knee highs,
right.
Where are you leaning towards here?
I personally think for what he's described, he's not looking at one pair of boots.
Yeah, I agree.
However, if he is, it's easy to put on wool socks.
Yeah.
It's not easy to wear 200. To me, even 200 grams is too much in the summer.
Yeah.
Even in the spring, it's just much. You can get a boot that's just slightly big. Not so big that it's too big, but big enough that you can put on some smart wool thin layer socks, like merino, and then a nice thick smart wool or mountaineer or whatever your brand is.
Yeah,
right, real big, thick, heavy. That will be worth that 200 grams plus of insulation.
Yes, that you can strip off and dry out.
Yeah, and you can bring extra pairs of. Yeah, you can't dry the boots out, not very easily.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to lean towards, if you're looking for a do-all, my number one recommendation is what I'm wearing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Crispy Brickstalls.
I knew you were going to say that.
They are Crispy's most popular boot, I believe.
Yes, they are.
They are, and that's for good reason. I've been wearing a pair of Crispy Brickstalls every day almost for...
Was it been 2 years now?
No, about a year.
Okay.
Since my last pair of cat boots quit, and I put these on thinking I'd wear them temporarily.
And you just wear them every day at work?
I wear them every day at work.
Yeah.
And the only wear and tear on them that's really visible is from me doing stupid stuff like catching them on fire. I had to replace a pair of laces from that, and some of the neoprene on one of the tongues was a little singed. But other than
Crispy
that,
does not advertise their boots as being fire rated.
They do not. They are not designed for that. And if you're grinding up a bunch of steel, and don't shoot the sparks directly onto your boot. I couldn't have ever imagined myself going to work every day in a $400 pair of boots.
Yeah.
$400 plus. But now I do it.
Mm-hmm.
And my goodness.
Yeah.
Life is so... it's... And I've used them in spring bear.
Mm-hmm.
I have used them in the summer. I have used them in the fall and early winter. And they're not insulated.
Yeah.
But they're heavy enough that they are a little warm in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And they're a little cold in the winter, early winter.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if I would wear them into October, but when late September, you can get a decent amount of snow depending on where you're at.
Yeah.
And that's where, just like you say, the right socks, boot dryers, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And just moving, like I say, if you're going to be sitting for a long time, well, then you need a heavy boot.
Yeah.
But honestly, I know he said Hanwags or Schnees. I've never worn either one of those.
Yeah, me neither. Those are two companies that I don't have any experience with yet.
I mean, you can look. Tell me what you think. They look worn.
They look like they've got 2 sheep hunts on them, is what I would equate that to.
But
the rand isn't peeling off.
Yeah.
The leather could use waxing, but the soles, like the actual outsole, the tread of the boot, I mean, you could pass it as you just pulled them out of the box. Those are very hard wearing treads. And that's great.
That's what's, and you're right. I do need to do some waxing on these again. I hadn't thought about that. There's a ABS cement on them. That's wearing right. That's peeled right there, but that's because I caught it on something real bad and it hasn't gotten any worse.
Yeah.
They are, it's blown me away how tough they are.
Yeah.
Versus an actual pair of work boots and how fast those wear out. Now we're not talking about somebody wearing boots for work.
Right.
But that's been my opinion of these.
Yeah.
So you say 2 sheep hunts. Do you mean 2 guided season sheep hunts? 2 of your guiding seasons?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's 2 months in the mountains?
A month.
A month?
Yeah.
Total? Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's a decent amount of.
Yep.
Now, when I get around to hunting with these again, I might decide that I shouldn't have worn them to work every day. And that's been kind of your opinion on the matter. But
yeah. So the crispy brick stalls are a very, very popular option. And they've come out with a lot of variations in the models of the brick stall. Mariah, you're wearing the original brown leather brick stalls.
I think they're the brick stall GTX.
Yeah.
They're not the original. They're
okay.
like the second iteration or something.
But they are uninsulated.
Yeah.
And they have a neoprene tongue, which allows for great breathability characteristics. They wick the moisture out of the boot very, very well. However, I wore the Brickstall SFs, the black and orange ones, in October when you and I went on that October trip where we took four-wheelers out in the mountains. I had those boots on, and those are the variants of the ones that you have on right now. They're a stiffer sole, and they are 200 grams of insulation.
What's the flex rating on those ones?
5.
Okay, yeah, these are 4.
Yeah. I wore those boots in the October hunt. I had also worn them in the previous August sheep hunt, at which point I shot a ram in August. I used those pretty much all summer training and then that fall hunting in August. And I had a caribou hunt on those after that in the mountains of my brother. I had a sheep hunt on them. I had a couple other bear hunts in the fall in the mountains with those boots, and they held up very, very well. However, when I got to October with that particular pair of boots, what I noticed, and if you remember, I did wear liner smart wools with heavy, thick smart wools on that October hunt, and my feet absolutely froze.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's because they have a very breathable neoprene tongue. And that leads me to my next thing. He's not asking about Crispies in particular.
He's not, yeah.
But the point is materials. And the construction of a boot, whether it's insulated or not, is either inherently warm or it's not. Some boots are built to be more warm than others, even without insulation. Your traditional mountain hunting boot, let's just reference like the ace of spades for hunting boots in the industry has been what? What brand? I mean, as far back as you can remember, what brand would come to mind as, wow, that's an expensive pair of classic hunting boots?
Scarpa?
Kenetrek.
That was my next guess, yeah.
Yeah, Kenetrek. Scarpa has always been what I looked at in years past as like the cutting edge of the synthetic boot. The full synthetic, super stiff, weird colors,
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's a crossover company that hunters use, much like Arc'teryx clothing. There's crossover there because the application goes for mountain hunting just as well as it does mountaineering. And if you're in that type of terrain where you want a super stiff boot with a real heavy, stiff shank, but it breathes well and it's full synthetic, there was a time when Scarpa was one of the only quality options in that category. Now there's a bunch of different companies making them. Crispy has full synthetic boots. Scarpa is still one of the leaders in that department. And then there's Hanwag. I believe Schnees has a full synthetic pair of boots now as well. I do think that Crispy is probably one of the most popular brands on the market right now in the American hunting industry. And that's because of accessibility and cost. Yeah. It seems like every Sportsman's Warehouse and any major hunting store that I go in, there's Crispy boots in there now. Didn't used to be that way. It used to be Kenetreks. And back to my point about Kenetreks being the old standby, the old guard, if you will, of the hunting boot that at least I always looked at when I walked into Sportsman's Warehouse as a teenager. I'd go by the boot rack and say, wow, those are, $530 for a pair of Kenetrek boots. Why are they so expensive? Well, a number of years ago, I bought the Kenetrek mountain guides, which have a one-piece rubber outsole, and they have a full leather upper, and they are 400 grams of insulation. I didn't buy those boots to take them sheep hunting. I didn't buy them to use them spring bear hunting in May and June. I bought them to wear in moose season from September and on. And I wore them at work extensively on cold job sites when I first started doing the job that I'm at now still. Because I was, in houses in the construction stage. So it's all plywood. It's not high wear. It's not like I'm catching them on a bunch of stuff that's going to destroy them. But I wore those boots a ton. And they are still the pair of leather boots that I go to in September. And I've had them for, at least 5 years. And they could still pass for almost new. It's because I keep up on the waxing and I don't do stuff with them that wears them out faster.
Like take them to work every day?
Well, like wear them sheep hunting. That's not a sheep hunting pair of boots for me. Then 2 years ago, I was out guiding and I had opted to go. I was going to be gone for about 8 weeks guiding through August and September. And it was going to go from 60-degree sheep hunting to below freezing moose season by the end of September when I was going to be out there. And so I bought a pair of Kenetrek Mountain Extremes uninsulated to use for August. And then I brought my Kenetrek insulated 400-gram insulation boots for the September season. And that worked like a champ. I wore those uninsulated boots into September on the first hunt in September that I did. And then it got cold, cold enough that in between hunts, I switched to the insulated version of those boots. And the uninsulated boots, I can say without a doubt, from Kenetrek are the warmest uninsulated boots I've ever run.
That's what I feel about these ones.
But that is because they are a full leather construction. And they don't have a neoprene tongue.
I need to look and see if these GTXs, if that's actually a neoprene tongue in these.
It is.
Is it?
I've talked with the guy that manages and kind of runs the Crispy US side of things. Kendall is his name.
Okay.
And he and I spoke on the phone after I had those brick stalls because on my sheep hunt, they actually leaked. I got water just flowing through those things, just walking through wet grass. That's because there was a failure at the neoprene seam under the top of the boot, where I'd gotten some silt and things lodged up underneath there on that stitching where that seam is. And they've since fixed that. They've gone to a leather tongue up to the front of the arch of your foot, like on all those tendons that connect to the top of your foot where the lacing kind of comes to the top there where all those lace lockers are on most pairs of boots. Now that's a leather tongue up to that point to prevent that from getting underneath that seam on the reverse lacing.
So the tongue material next to the leather on mine is nylon.
Yeah.
It's not neoprene.
Okay. Nylon, neoprene. You get what I'm trying to say though. The point is it's very breathable. That's why they put it there. And even though those are full grain leather around the rest of the boot, they breathe so well that they get cold for me when it snows. The Kenetreks, because they have a complete leather construction, full grain leather, the entire boot is all leather. Those are warmer for me. And I was able to get away with using those even into the first snow in September out guiding. If I would have been wearing those Crispies, I don't think my feet would have stayed warm. Now, that being said, the uninsulated model of those Kenetreks, while they are warm, I wouldn't recommend them as a do-it-all boot. And that's kind of where I'm going with all this.
Okay.
I would recommend a 400 milligram insulated boot.
The do-all?
As a do-all. If your foot type allows it. If you have hot feet, then I wouldn't recommend it. If you have hot feet, then I would say 200 milligram. If you have gram. If you have generally cold feet or mild tempered feet, then I would say 400 gram insulation. Here's why. You can buy for $100 from Graxsaw a pair of boot dryers that runs off of one of your auxiliary battery packs that you carry on your hunts anyway. And those will greatly accelerate the boot drying process. You can also pull a few other tricks out of your hat and help dry those boots out. If you're using a wood stove on any of your hunting, if you have a titanium wood stove in a hot tent, like an ultralight teepee from Peaks, then you can hang those boots from the rafters in your teepee at night with that wood stove a ripping and the boot dryer's going. And even if you had 600 gram insulated lacrosse knee boots, with those boot dryers and a heat source, they'll be dry in the morning. But you're not going to hunt in rubber boots on sheep hunts most likely. And you don't want to train in those in July. Your feet will just fall apart. You'll get trench foot. But depending on how your feet run, I would recommend either a 200 gram insulated boot, which is probably the happy medium that I would tend to go with, just because I know how my feet react. I know how much my feet sweat. And if I had colder feet, I would go with a 400 gram boot. Remington, my buddy, has a pair of Canatrek Mountain Extremes, and he's not a gear junkie when it comes to boots. He has one pair of boots that he wears for leathers exclusively. Spring bear, summertime, whether we're out four-wheelering or whatever, in July, August sheep hunting, September moose hunting. If he's wearing leather boots, he's wearing 400 gram Canatrek Mountain Extremes.
Well, he was.
He is.
What were those boots he had out there?
Those are Canatrek pack boots that he had deer hunting this year. Okay. Those are just for horseback stuff, and then he brought them down there just to try them out.
Gotcha. Okay.
Those are not boots that he's hiking around the mountains in.
Yeah, okay. That would make a lot of sense that he wouldn't.
Yeah. When it comes to a pair of backcountry footwear for him, he chose to go with a do-it-all year-round solution. He said, I would rather have insulation and not need it and have to dry them out than have no insulation and get frozen feet.
Yeah.
It can go either way.
I would rather own two pairs of boots, especially in his situation. But hey,
exactly.
Yeah,
Have one of each. Now, for Canatreks, that's $1,000 right there to have a pair of uninsulated and a pair of insulated Mountain Extremes. To me, I think it's worth it. At some point, I would say buy one and then save up your money and buy another one. Buy another pair. As for synthetics, you're going to be hard-pressed to have a pair of synthetic boots that's insulated that stays as warm as a pair of full-grain leather insulated boots. Unless you go with one of the really expensive pairs of mountaineering brand. La Sportiva and Scarpa both have full synthetic boots that are very, very warm insulated models, but you need to be able to handle practically wearing a ski boot all the time. Because they are really, really stiff. The entire boot is just a brick. They are heavy, they are super warm, and they'll dry out faster because they are synthetic. Some of the models are. But you're going to pay for it in overall comfort and performance, in my opinion. I don't like full-on ski boot stiffness type of boots. That's just not what I like. I like a little bit of flexibility in there. I really like those Canatrek Mountain Extremes. Those are some of my favorite pairs of boots.
Those are 400?
Well, I have them in 400s, but those are the mountain guides, I think.
Okay.
But I'm saying the uninsulated model for me, they're warm enough that I would compare them to being like a 200 gram insulated, which is usually just consists of a Gore-Tex liner. Is all that is. It's not really much insulation. The Gore-Tex liner gives you that level of insulation, basically, is what they tell you. So to me, the Canatrek Mountain Extreme, full leather, leather tongue, the whole works, the traditional, original mountain hunting boot style with a 10-inch shank, that to me is one of my favorite styles of boots. It does take longer to dry out. It is leather. After time on a hunt and the wax starts to wear off, they will soak up more water into the leather, which will take longer to dry off. But if you condition them regularly and you take care of them, they'll take care of you until they just wear out, which takes a while for a good pair of Canatreks.
Have you ever worn the Crispy's version of those?
I have the Crispy guides.
The Brickstall guides?
Nope.
Just the guides?
Just the original guides. Those are a full leather. They don't tend to fit me as well. I do have a pair of them, and I like them, and I've worn them on hunts. But when I know I'm going to be doing a lot of miles, I've usually gone with the Canatreks. This year, I'm probably going to be experimenting more with those Crispy guides. They are a 10-inch leather. They're
not a full grain leather.
Is it a nubuck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are the ones I'm wearing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Their Wild Rock looks like the
600 gram.
800.
Oh, really?
They have an 800 model. They have an 800 and a 200.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you want a really warm boot.
Yeah. That's pretty.
$510, full grain leather.
That's pretty warm.
Full leather tongue.
To me, that's like October hunts only. I don't know if I could handle that in September, even in moose season. I don't think I could handle 800 grams.
You know, moose season, you tend to not move as much, so you might be okay.
Maybe.
Until you are.
Well, and he said he doesn't sit still very long.
Yeah, that's true.
So if you're a mover and a shaker, then
right.
I probably wouldn't wear 800 grams of insulation on my footwear.
Unless you're just a cold foot kind of guy. But
I
say knowing your feet is a big part of all this.
Yeah, your feet can sweat a ton. You can sweat up to a liter of water through your feet in a day.
Yeah, it's a lot of water.
That's insane. That is incredible to even think about.
Which means it's important.
Yes, footwear is very important. That being said, the one boot company that I'm really interested in is Lathrop & Sons.
I've never heard of them.
It's a completely custom, small company boot design. They have uninsulated. They have insulated of 200 or 400 gram. And they do a custom footbed. They'll send you a footbed fit kit.
Oh, yeah?
And send back to them, and they will build the insole of your boot and the midsole of your boot custom to your foot. So if you have foot fatigue problems and you're nervous about getting blisters and only being able to buy one pair of boots, and you don't figure out that they don't work for you until your first sheep hunt or until you've worn them in too much to return them, by the time you figure that out, then I would probably err on the side of spending a little bit more money and getting a pair of boots that is completely custom fitted to your foot if you're only going to have one pair of boots. And again, just you and I, we would prefer to run less insulation and more sock.
Yeah.
And adapt
more
that way.
Yeah.
And adapt that way rather than having more insulation, which is going to soak up that moisture and it's going to sit in there longer. Wet boots on long hikes equals blisters.
Yeah. And soggy feet, which suck.
Trench foot.
Yeah.
You don't want to get trench foot.
You know, I'm looking at Lathrop & Sons website right now, and these look nice.
It's pretty impressive what they've done.
And I like the fact that they don't try to, talk about all these different types of boots they have. Yeah. They have the Mountain Hunter Elite, the Mountain Hunter. They're all the same boot, just different, designed different for different applications instead of all the different styles of boots, which is nice too. But
it's a handful of variants of the same design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one's got more insulation. This one's stiffer. Right.
Yeah. I like that company. I'm very interested in trying out a pair of their boots.
And they don't run any more than
pair of Canatrex.
$542 for the most expensive pair.
Yeah. That's what you're going to pay.
$470. Yeah, no, $542. So yeah.
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 You're right in the same ballpark, but you're getting a custom fitted boot to your foot. If that's valuable to you, if you've got tough feet, I don't have problems with blisters and foot fatigue. And I've been able to wear Crispies, Scarpas, Canatrex, and they've never done me wrong. I've hiked miles in muck boots and lacrosse boots, and no problem. Lacrosse hip waders, and I don't get blisters. My feet get sore from fatigue and improper support in different boots.
I do not recommend hiking in muck boots.
No, after a while,
lacrosse are all right.
Lacrosse has ankle fit,
but the muck
fit
boots,
better.
Oof,
yeah,
they slipping.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
You get to like bunching your toes up, and then your toes are sore at the end of the day.
It gets old fast.
Yeah. Something I've been told is by older guys is take care of your feet.
Yes.
When you're young, you think you're tough. You think, and I don't know how old Caleb is, but when, young, talking about just younger guys in general, you think you're tough and you can just wear whatever.
Yeah.
And it's real easy to get into that thought process, especially with feet.
Yeah.
Because they're just your feet. But that's the way we get around. And, they say take care of them because if you take care of them now, they'll be a lot less of an issue when you get older.
Yeah.
And hey, sweaty feet all the time is bad.
Yeah.
It's bad for your feet.
Even if you have tough feet, if your feet are always wet and you're putting a lot of hard, heavy miles on them in rough terrain, you will wear your feet out. You will get blisters.
Right.
You will just peel that moist layer of skin right off in that boot.
Well,
that will happen.
And it's a petri dish for bacteria and fungus and those things to start growing, which you don't have what you need to take care of that when you're in the field. That can really suck.
Yep. Bring some kind of a antibiotic cream in case you start developing problems that you don't normally have.
Yeah.
You might figure out that you get it on a hunt. I've been with guys that have had that happen. That it just looks and sounds painful. So take care of your feet. Change your socks. Let them dry out, even if they don't stink. Just change them out on a daily basis. Just to let them dry out, and or put your socks in your sleeping bag at night. Dry them out. Take your insoles out of your boots at night. Let those get more air. Air out those insoles. Buy quality insoles, even if you don't get a pair of Lathrop boots with a custom footbed. Even if you get a pair of Crispies or Kenetrex or Hanwags or Schnees, whatever the brand is. And that's the thing too, is we didn't talk about this, is any pair of boots, for the most part, as long as they fit your feet.
That's the biggest thing.
Brand is not even a consideration for me. Zamberlan makes high quality boots on their top end. Schnees makes good boots. Kenetrex, good boots. Crispy, same thing.
Yep.
Scarpas, La Sportiva. There are so many options of footwear. The reason that there are so many options is they're all good at something. Some of them are better at more things than others, more variety. You can kill more birds with one stone. But at the end of the day, they're all made a specific way. Some people can't wear Scarpas because they say they're too narrow. Some of those European fit styles are too narrow. Crispies are Italian boots. However, they have a wider than normal toe box when compared to other European boot brands. So if narrow is a problem for you, make sure that the company offers them in a wide option.
Yeah.
If you need boots that will fit like a sock that you just want to break in and form to your foot over time, then go with a full grain leather. If you want more rigidity, maybe go with more of a synthetic style of boot. So there's tons of options, but at the end of the day, you need to know what your feet do. If you have hot feet, then I would not recommend getting anything over a 200 gram insulated boot, and just get them a half size bigger if you can get away with that, and just wear more sock. That's, at the end of the day, probably going to be your best Swiss Army knife tool for footwear. And then save up more money and buy more specialized pairs of boots, because Alaska, you can go from 90 degrees in July, and you do not want to be training and doing 20-mile training hikes in the mountains in July with 400 grams of insulation on your feet. You will rot your feet right off your legs. That is going to be the most uncomfortable thing you'll do. And you're not going to want to take those things sheep hunting come August.
The best piece of boot advice you'll get this whole podcast: break the boots in, wear them before you hunt. Even
Absolutely.
if, some of these newer boots like Crispies,
Yeah.
You're not supposed to have to break them in like an old pair of, leather boots, right?
You got to make sure they work, though.
But you got to make sure they work for you.
Even if it's not a break-in for the boot,
right?
It's a break-in for your foot for that boot.
I have a pair of, even these brick stalls, when I wore them, depending on the terrain or concrete jungle that I was walking for the day.
Yeah.
When I first got them, walking on hard surfaces all day, I had sore feet.
Yeah.
I don't now. My feet are used to them. And I have a pair of crispy hiking shoe type, a lot shorter, right?
Yeah.
That I don't wear very often, but they're the same way. And actually, my feet get more sore with those on hard surfaces, so I don't wear them very much.
Yeah.
It's really easy to buy a piece of equipment last minute because finally I can afford it, or I don't care. I'm swiping the credit card so I can go hunting.
Yeah.
And I get it. But boots are wear them before you go.
Yeah.
Hey, wear them to work for a couple days.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you don't do it all the time,
Absolutely.
Be careful with them. Wear them to work for a couple days. Make sure you're going to be okay. Because if you start hurting, it's going to suck.
Come July, at all my job sites, I'm wearing my boots that I'm taking sheep hunting just to get my feet used to wearing them. Because I wear a pair of Ariat cowboy boots to work every day. Those ain't sheep hunting boots. And so come July, right before hunting season, when I'm going to be in lace-ups for the next 2 months plus, I'm wearing whatever pair of boots I'm taking sheep hunting to work for at least a few days just to get my feet back in the swing of things. It's not because I'm going to get blisters, but it's because there's just a different adjustment to those style of footwear.
Right. Well, and then if you need to go back and forth between your other boots for a couple of days, you have the opportunity to do that so your feet can get back used to that. Because I know, like I said, when I first took these hunting even, they're, taking them off at the end of the day, climbing into the sleeping bag or whatever felt really good because my feet would be sore depending on the terrain.
Yeah. Yeah. Feet are very individual, but you got to take care of your Lamborghinis. I've been waiting to slip that in there. Your Chevrolets. And on that note, folks, thanks for listening. We appreciate the support. Again, if you'd like to contact us, reach us on our website at the contact button, thenorthernhunter.com, and write us an email if you've got a question about hunting or anything to do with the outdoors in Alaska. You can also support us by leaving us a 5-star rating on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on, Apple, Spotify, whatever it is. Give us a 5-star rating. That helps boost us in the algorithms, get this show in front of more people. And then also you can write us a written review to tell us what we're doing right and what you appreciate about it. We'd appreciate that. And you can also support us directly by purchasing Northern Hunter logo wear on our website in our shop page. And we have hats, hoodies, and t-shirts. And you can also support us through any of our sponsor links that we have for discount codes. We have 6 sponsors and 5 discount codes. Appreciate the support, and they would as well for those companies. So, without further ado, thanks for listening to us this week. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed making it. We'll see you back here again next week. And until then, get out there, get after it, and good luck.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to STEALTHYHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.